Liz, we got the video statement, please.
Yes, this meeting of the Galt City Council is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Tonight's meeting can be seen on Channel 14 and will also be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv on Thursday, September 9th at 10 p.m. and Saturday, September 11th at 9 a.m. Tonight's meeting can also be seen via live video streaming on the city's website at www.ci.galt.ca.us. A VHS copy is also available for checkout from any library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address council should fill out a speaker identification form and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing council and state your name for the record.
Thank you. Agenda approval, additions, and/or deletions. Council, are there any?
I would like to pull for discussion E4.
E4. Any others? None. I have one item. Okay.
Go ahead.
I have G5. Chief, I understand we have a consultant that's out of town. Okay. So I'd like to pull that, if we could, council, up to right at the first item under the regular calendar. Any other items? Okay. Presentations?
Tonight.
Okay. Public comment?
Under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the audience may address the council on any item of interest to the public or on any agenda item before or during consideration of the item. Please fill out a speaker sheet located on the table inside the entrances to the council chambers and forward the completed speaker sheet to the city clerk prior to addressing the council. We request that you state whether you live within the Galt City limits or the county area. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker. John White.
Good evening, council, audience. I'm here tonight to talk about Constitution Day and Constitution Week, which is fast approaching. Just kind of a reminder, most people know this, but the Constitution was actually signed on September 17, 1787, after one long, hot summer, starting in May to September in Philadelphia. I don't know if that was a record heat wave during that time, but it was very uncomfortable. And it was called the Miracle in Philadelphia because there was absolutely no reason why they should have been able to get it through in 4 or 5 months, considering that they were inventing a government from whole cloth, any more than there was any reason for them to beat the British in the Revolutionary War. So it was a momentous occasion, and in honor of that, well, let me just say what Constitution Week is. It's an American observance to commemorate the adoption of the United States Constitution. The observance runs annually from September 17th to September 23rd. It was officially enacted on August 2nd, 1956 by President Dwight D. Eisenhower from a congressional resolution petitioned by the Daughters of the American Revolution. The purpose of the Observance Week is to promote study and education about the Constitution, which was originally adopted by the American Congress of the Confederation on September 17, 1787, as I previously mentioned. And one of the other points I'd like to add is kind of interesting about public schools. Federal law passed in 2004 requires, and I'm quoting, that all schools that receive federal funding provide a course to all students on the Constitution on Constitution Day September 17th. This law is known as H.R. 48-118, and the text is found at Section 111B. And it's interesting that there are no specific rigidities here and where they are on the level of schools. Just basically they thought it was pretty important. And I just want to share that last week I went to the open house at the high school, and I was very impressed with their education program on civics/economics. The teachers that I saw there really are squared away, and I'm really heartened to see that. So things are happening in our education system to our credit. And finally, on a maybe a more negative note, right now in a lot of the literature that's being put out there, there's a disclaimer on the Constitution. And it reads, as I quote this book is a product of its time and does not reflect the same values as it would if it were written today. Parents may wish to discuss with their children how views on race, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, and interpersonal relations have changed since this book was written before allowing them to read this classic book. And I think then, let me put this right on next to the Bible. You know, that basically things have changed in the last 2,000 years or 230 years. That's how far it's gone. I think the founders deserve a little more credit than that, and to not be demeaned. But to me, this is a big day. Next week, Galt Herald, Tea Party Patriots will be doing readings out of the Constitution, and we're working on a format for that, and hopefully have students participate in that as well. Just to be able to say that we've read the thing, I think would be a momentous achievement. So, just like to share with that tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
John Hickey?
I'd like to thank some people about their openness about the 2010 ordinance. We had a meeting. I didn't speak at it. I'd like to speak everything straightforward to the council and everybody in town. I met with Jason Berman and the chief of police way back when we had a double homicide. We set up some guidelines, but they're lying about the uniformed security police that I agreed to and the 50 people per piece per security. I agreed to 75 and have achieved that goal and plan on keeping on achieving that goal. The ordinance is really overstated, overwritten, and it only handles four people. It covers the Grange Hall, which is a nonprofit group. John Hickey which is about a nonprofit group. The hall doesn't make that much money, and it's a good write-off for me. I have a lot of other substantial income. I don't use that hall as a write-off. I use it as a write-off, really. And I also would like to say that I can't believe this ordinance that they rewrote. It's all about signs. It's all about people are not concerned about public safety. That's all BS. And you know the short abbreviation for BS. And I just can't believe that this ordinance is still up for deal. I know we're going to do some more negotiating, but I wanted to talk to the city council in whole. And I want to tell everybody that I feel this ordinance is not a free enterprise ordinance, and I think it's not justified, especially even the way it's rewritten today. So I just want to speak my piece, and that's exactly the way I feel about it. I don't think this ordinance would do any justice or any good to anything. And I can't even get the ABC to issue me a license of any kind because I do not have a liquor license. The people bring their own beer, and we monitor it real close. If they get out of hand, I shut the beer off. And I shut the party down anytime I want, because I own that building. It's my pride and joy. And this is just a slap in the face, this ordinance. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey.
Heather Farmer?
Hi, my name's Heather Farmer. I live in the city limits.
I'm also had a couple of comments. We did meet with the city manager, city attorney, and a couple council members. That was nice. I'm glad that they agreed to sit down and meet with us. My problem is they speak that they would like to have open dialogue with us as businesses, they would like to work with us, but what I would like to see is that to happen. So, I feel like we run a good business down there. We do care about public safety. I think that there has been memos that have gone out from the police chief to the rest of the city council and the city manager stating that, you know, we don't care. I mean, if anyone would like to read a copy of it, I have it. That we don't care about public safety, we're all in it for financial gain. We've never been in this for financial gain. It's a large open space, there's not much you can do with it. We've chose to keep renting it out over the years. We're very diligent about how we run our business, and we would like to be able to keep doing that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, Woody?
Well, first I want to say I hate to see Dawn go,
Thank you, Woody.
and Barbara. We have two councilmen here to speak up for us. Okay, now, I still think the city is not for business and not for builders either. Signs, flags, and they let the guy put the stuff up in front of the buildings here. We have 5 buildings empty. That's a lot of income for the city. Okay, we're going on down here. You make all the codes and don't follow them yourself. I want to give you some examples. You don't enforce the fireproof tarps at the swap meet. The fire marshal said 2 or 3 years ago, they will be on there. Number 2 on that is fire extinguishers. The mayor keeps talking about all this is fire stuff, you know, all these ordinances. Well, let's get your part done. Also, the market sign along the freeway, the swap meet sign, is illegal. I'll tell you how we found out. Caltrans told me. Our attorney was investigating it. And we're only doing all this, that's because of what you're doing. We're coming back at you. And then we have some signs on our buildings. I talked to Chris, I think it was. They've been there 25 years. Napa had them, and the other guy had them. And then we were going to put up a sign that says, "Welcome to Galt," on that space. The city says, "No, you can't put it up. It's too big." I said, "It's been there 25 years." So finally, Chris decided on 110 square feet, which is smaller, but this sign is one piece, all hand-painted, glossy, and you can see it way down the road. And so our attorney will be here tomorrow. He's coming from San Francisco, Mr. Belli, and we're going to be working on that thing. Because we have to cut 3 foot off. This is done by a machine, one piece. And so he's going to be working on that. And then we kept talking about the swap meet for years. You know how I've been fighting with you guys? Well, when you kept running the swap meet down with rent, why is the industrial building empty? I had one of them buildings. The silk man had one. The t-shirt man had one. And there was a couple other vendors over there. They're empty because you kept doing this stuff over here. So I think that's all I'm going to say right now.
Thank you, Woody. Next speaker? Or
All I have
we're
is
done?
public comment.
Okay. So the first item. Consent agenda items.
Let me read them all first.
Should read them and then we pulled one, right? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, we have 5 items on our consent calendar. Number 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 17th, 2010. Number 2, approval of the City of Galt warrants. Number 3, a street closure for the Galt High School homecoming parade. Number 4, which is pulled and will be discussed, revisions to Galt market rules and regulations and delegating authority to the city manager for future revisions. And number 5, approval of the treasurer's report for the period ending July 2010.
Okay. And Vice Mayor Payne, you pulled that item?
I did.
Okay.
Item E4, regarding the Galt market, the Galt Flea Market. And I would like to state right up front that this has absolutely no reflection on our city manager. If I knew he would be here for the next 50 years, I would have no problems with this. But you don't know how long you're going to have a city manager. And this states that all of the, you read it, rules and regulations establish all further rules and regulations as he deems necessary or appropriate for the smooth, orderly, fair, and safe operation of the Galt Market from time to time and without City Council review or approval. And I think one of the things that we've seen tonight happens when you bring these things before the council. It does give the community an opportunity to express their views. And sometimes they actually bring up something that we didn't think about that is good to consider. Also, I look at the Galt Market differently than I would, say, Public Works. I think the Galt Market is almost a community event. I know our schools even are somewhat affected by what goes on out there and what's sold out there. So even though I think our city manager is very capable, I have concerns about taking it away from the city council, just mostly because it needs to be transparent and considered by the council, because we represent the people, as well as giving the people an opportunity to voice in on things. So I'd be interested to hear if there's any other discussion.
Council?
Barbara, I just have a question for you, because you made a good comment about being comfortable with Jason. I don't know if we can, but Jason, is there any way to put a clause in there that it would go into effect that if you were to ever leave the city, that it would have to come back to council to be reapproved and or discussed?
I guess it's the city attorney probably want to weigh in on that. Typically, you don't do these types of things with the tenure of the city manager.
Well, sometimes you put a sunset clause on some of these.
I think that if the council had desire regarding revisiting this at some point, I'd recommend that you put a date specific when the council would revisit whether or not the delegation was appropriate, as opposed to when and if Mr. Behrman leaves, because that would be really hard to frankly keep track of that particular provision and make sure it came back to the council.
I don't like talking about when I'm going to leave, but in the event that I did leave at some point in the far distant future, the council can always revisit it at that time, right, as well. So there's a couple ways you can handle it. One is put a date certain, a couple years out, a year out, whatever you feel comfortable with.
When does your contract end?
Give us an idea. November of 2012.
All right, just talking a couple of years. Barbara, would you be comfortable with the 2-year sunset clause on that? Then it can come back to council at that time for discussion. Therefore, you know, I'm comfortable with Jason being able to handle it. I think he's quite competent, so.
Well,
I agree.
the other problem I had with this, it doesn't really distinguish between day-to-day operations and some major rule changes. I think if there was some way, you know, we could address that, I would feel better. And I would rather have the input from the citizens as well as the vendors before the rule is changed instead of after it's changed, and then we get a lot of unhappy people coming to the council. I'd rather hear first. Those are my points.
Well, let me just, I guess, make a few comments, and I understand what Councilmember Payne is saying. I think one of the reasons we're bringing this forward is, one, you know, we have changes that we need to make from time to time. One of the ones was brought forward to the mayor, and we were kind of thinking about it, and you know, most of the administrative things that we do on a day-to-day basis, staff is able to handle. One of the departments under me is the operation of the Galt Market. It's managed by our Parks and Rec department right now, and you know, we have to provide for the safe, smooth operation of that market in order to provide that opportunity for our vendors as well as those that are visiting the market. Most of the changes are very kind of administrative in nature that don't have large impacts. The big ones that people are always anxious to know about are obviously rate and fee increases or changes. Those would still be under the purview of the city council. I would not have the ability to make those changes. And if there were anything else in there, there's a copy of the rules that you saw. Most of those are just really minor issues relating to how we deal with the vendors on a day-to-day basis, what time they have check-ins, or how they're supposed to clean up their spaces, and different types of things that really, in my opinion, don't belong at the council. But if there was anything that ever came up that was a concern to anybody, and we can certainly bring those items, or if there's anything that we felt was somewhat sensitive, then we can certainly bring those back to the council. But the reason for trying to make the change is just so that we can get the changes when we need to make a change, we can get it through faster, more efficiently, without taking the additional staff and council time of going through that process.
In the past, we have reached out. When Councilman Ravoy was here, he and I went out to the market and talked and discussed it with some of the vendors. But we still have that capability. I mean, we don't lose that as council members, so I'm comfortable in trusting you with that, and I don't think it would be a problem.
I'm comfortable with it too, and one of the reasons this came up is because I, as the mayor, received an email for somebody that was concerned with some knives and swords that were laying out. They were concerned with their grandchildren, is what it was. So, and I have confidence in what you're doing, and I believe that coming back, every 2 years, and if council would prefer even a year, but I feel that, out 2 years, and you're going to keep us informed of any issues. And like you said, if there was anything else, you would be bringing it to us anyway. Okay. Council, any other comments?
None.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd recommend that you entertain a motion on this item separate from the consent calendar. And if you wanted to add a sunset provision into the proposed resolution, I'm prepared to offer such language.
Okay. Council?
Okay, so make sure I get it right. So you want us to approve the rest of the consent calendar first, or you want us to do this one first?
I think you ought to conclude this item first.
Right.
Okay. All right, so then I'll make a motion that we revise the Galt market rules and regulations and delegating the authority to the city manager for the future revisions with a sunset clause of November 2012.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second? If not, I will make a second.
Just one little point of
Any further discussion now? Go ahead.
Okay, what if you leave before the 12th? What if something happens? I mean, we're putting...
The council can always revisit this item.
At any time.
At any time,
Right.
The council can bring it up and make the change. If there's a change that's made that the council's not comfortable with, the council can revisit it. It's not taking something away from the city council as much as it is just making it a little bit more in line with the way we do business on a day-to-day basis, where the city council charges the city manager and the administrative staff with managing the day-to-day operations of the organization, and leave kind of the higher level policy decisions to the city council.
But that's not written in here, correct?
That's
just,
what.
So it's just basically, so if we wanted it to say what you were just saying, that it should have a little more of an addendum in it, correct? That you would be the day-to-day, but if something that you thought was a little more than the day-to-day would come back to council.
Okay.
So you're looking at
just like it would be administrative, sort of basically administrative stuff that you would have.
right. I guess the point is the rules themselves are really administrative in nature. They deal with how the market runs on a day-to-day basis, and so these are the types of things that typically we handle at a staff level. And for whatever reason, this has been an exception where it's come back to the city council, probably for the reasons that Councilmember Payne expressed, which is it's a pretty visible part of our organization, and for whatever reason, the council in the past felt that it was in the community's best interest to hear these items at the city council level, as opposed to delegating that responsibility to the city manager and the administrative staff in the way that you do other operations in the city. And so really it's a choice that the council might have if you want to retain that ability yourself to manage and oversee the higher level stuff and the market, or whether you want to delegate that responsibility to the city manager. And that's, you know, basically, that's the decision before you. It's not, you know, it's not the end of the world either way. It's one of those things that, you know, if the council's more comfortable retaining the responsibility itself, then you can certainly retain that responsibility and continue to do things the way it's always been done.
See, part of the trust for me is that letting go of that responsibility, giving Jason the authority to do it,
I agree.
because he's capable of doing it, and if there are issues, I entrust him, and I do trust him, that he'll come back and bring it to council. And he's done this in the past about other issues, and I trust it, and I trust that he would do it in the future, so I have no problem with it. And trust me, if he didn't
No,
bring it
I
to
have no
council-
problem, I don't have a problem with Jason.
I know, trust me, if
But
the
I
vendors
know-
will come and let you know.
We love Jason.
I'm not, I don't want it to be a personality thing, but, there have been other people, I don't want to go too far to the right or the left here, but I trust you not to slip something in, so if it has to do with it while you're here, then I'm fine with it, but,
Steve, let me ask,
okay.
And that's the sunset clause.
Yeah, okay.
let me ask you something, okay? Is it appropriate to put in there on this sunset clause for the current city manager? Because if we were to hire another city manager, we're not planning on to further concern a couple of council members, then that would be one of the things I believe we would be discussing anyway. All the responsibilities. And I'm trying to stay away from, you know, personnel and dictating what an employee will or will not do. I'm comfortable with this, but I'd like to give him the responsibility.
Yes, it is. It is a change to the resolution that you could do. But because of the concern as it relates to tracking this resolution,
Okay.
what I would recommend, if you want to tie it to the current manager, is that at the end of section 2, which is where you delegate the authority,
Mm-hmm.
to put a provision that says that this delegation shall expire on November 1st, 2012, or when City Manager Behrman leaves the city, whichever occurs first.
There you go.
Okay. So,
We'll have to change the motion.
so I have to change the motion to that effect? All right, so I'll make a motion that we revise the Galt market rules and regulations and delegating authority to the current city manager, and with the provision that the delegation until November of 2012 and/or until 212, and what was the other part we had mentioned?
Is to delegate to November 1st, 2012, or until such time as City Manager Behrman leaves the city, whichever occurs first.
Okay, until such time that he leaves the city, whichever occurs first.
That's your amended motion, and I'll second it. Any further discussion? None? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Payne,
No.
Haynes,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Shelton.
Yes. Okay. And we'll take the remainder, unless there's any questions, of 1, 2, 3, and 5. Is that correct? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne. Aye. Councilmember Haynes.
Aye.
Councilmember Powers.
Aye.
Mayor Shelton.
Aye. Thank you. Scheduled matters none. Regular calendar. That's where we're going to move the one item.
So our next item, expenditure of vehicle theft enforcement program funds. Yeah, it has to count down. It'll take just a minute.
All right. Oh, good enough. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight's a staff report requesting the approval for the purchase of 2 Vigilant Video brand license plate recognition systems and corresponding software that will help upgrade our communication system.
Just, can you move the speaker?
Oh, move this one. Pursuant to the, as the staff report says, pursuant to California Vehicle Code, a $1 fee is collected from each license that's registered in the state of California. The fee is collected by the State of California Department of Motor Vehicles and is deposited to a law enforcement trust account to be used by participating counties for the deterrence, investigation, and prosecution of stolen vehicles. Each quarter, Sacramento County deposits a predetermined percentage into an account that is available to the Galt Police Department. Staff is requesting council tonight approve the expenditure of $28,920 from this existing fund in order for the police department to purchase two mobile license plate recognition systems, or LPRs as they're referred to. Now, the systems will be attached to the roof of two patrol vehicles, and they have the ability to quickly and accurately read vehicle license plates as the patrol cars drive through town. So whether the vehicles are parked or they are mobile, the system will read those license plates, and it compares them against a known database for stolen or wanted vehicles. If the officer passes a vehicle and it is registered in that database, the system will alert the officer of that hit, and the officer is able to take appropriate action. The system also has the ability to allow the officers to enter their own plates. So if they're looking for a plate in an investigation or an Amber Alert or something along that lines, the system will also alert any of the patrol cars on the system of that entry that has been made. And so those are two good features. And an additional feature that the system has is that it photographs and it enters the GPS coordinates of every vehicle that it reads. So that's a tremendous investigative tool for detectives if they're looking for vehicles after crime, or if they're looking for a series of break-ins or burglaries in an area. They can go back and they can review this data of all these vehicles that have been captured in the system. Now, the Elk Grove Police Department has been using the Vigilant Video brand license plate reading systems with a great deal of success, and staff at the police department has been in contact with them, and we've worked out and established protocols for sharing that data together. So by allowing our department to sole source with Vigilant Video will allow us to also share Elk Grove's data on their existing database, and in turn it will allow them to share the data that we collect. So it will just enhance the abilities of both agencies to seek out these stolen vehicles. Now, right now, currently, we have a wireless communication system. The name of the system is NetMotion. It talks between the vehicles and the department and allows for a secure connection once it goes inside the police department. When working on this project, we identified the need to update that NetMotion or that communication software. So both the purchase of the license plate reading systems and the communication software are well within the scope for appropriate use of the funds through the stolen vehicle program. We have identified the upgrade to the middleware is going to cost $3,933, and the camera systems for two-car camera systems, which we think are adequate and appropriate right now, will be $24,987. Now, both those costs will come out of that existing fund, which is restricted for deterrence, investigation, and prosecution of the vehicle. So there's no impact to the general fund whatsoever. So with me tonight is Mike McGee. He's with Vigilant Video. He's the vendor that we've been working with on the software. And he has just a short PowerPoint presentation to go through to just show you how the system works and the abilities that it has. So unless there's any questions at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mike, let him go through just a quick PowerPoint presentation. And then if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Council? No? No. Go ahead.
On behalf of Vigilant Video, I want to thank Lieutenant Upgrove for including us in this meeting tonight. I prepared a quick PowerPoint presentation for council and members, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor. As Lieutenant Upgrove has said a moment ago, the ALPR, Automatic License Plate Recognition System, is just that. It's automated. Instead of an officer having to call into dispatch to check a plate, maybe take anywhere from 60 seconds to a minute and a half to get some feedback, or entering into their computer on board, he can drive his car at the given posted speed limit and obtain vehicle license plates in his surrounding area quickly, and within 3 to 5 seconds have a a match or no match with the software. Car detector is the name of the system. The C-series camera are the cameras we are using. It is a dual color camera with an infrared camera. The infrared mode captures the actual license plate of the car. The color camera gives us a color overview, so as the officer is driving down, he's obtaining a picture of the actual vehicle. You can see if it's a black sedan, a gray, white, red, and then the IR camera gives us the license plate read. Here's a couple of sketches how the system is used in a parking lot as well as on a surface street. The officer's patrol car is able to drive through and capture plates to his 45-degree angles, 90 degrees, 180 in front of him. On the side of the road, he can be parked and other vehicles can be mobile, or he can be mobile in the same lane of traffic or opposing traffic. Two-camera system, different millimeter cameras capture plates at different distances, kind of like a 35 millimeter camera. If you want to change your lens for a focal zoom, we'd be using different millimeter cameras to capture across the street, across the median, different lanes of traffic. Inside, this is a snapshot of what the officer would see on their mobile computer. We've got a setup tab, pause, import hot list, start shift, end shift. So one vehicle with a camera system can have multiple users. They can log in, use the system. What you see on the left side is an overview of a color image, and on the right side is going to be the license plate that's captured. And if it was a positive hit, it would show up in the hit list area in the bottom left-hand quadrant of the screen. The hit list or the hot list that's coming back is a list that is actually made by the California State Highway Patrol and distributed to all law enforcement agencies for stolen vehicles. And that's what we're querying off of. On the back end of it, out of the mobile vehicle and back into the department will have the capability, as the lieutenant had stated, of sharing their data with the Elk Grove Police Department. Both agencies would be able to log in, see the history of that particular car, see if any hits were confirmed. This is using the GPS latitude and longitudes as well as a time and date stamp. This is an overview of a Google map. The blue dots in the center of the map indicate a breadcrumb trail of what direction the car was driving, and the single red pinpoint actually isolates one of the vehicles that was stolen. So administrative purposes, running reports, looking at the data, they can go back and look at the data collected and see where stolen vehicles were recovered. And this is just kind of a quick overview of where the state list comes from, excuse me, and how it's pushed out to the Elk Grove server in this instance, and how Elk Grove would share that information over to the City of Galt Police Department, and the agencies would work and share that data together. And that would conclude my slideshow.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions I can answer for you?
I think we have.
Jim, the information's retained for how long?
That's going to be set up per MOU between us and Elk Grove Police Department, so we haven't worked that out. But we're required to retain it up to a certain amount per law, and then the question is whether or not we'll retain it any length of time after that.
I know Sacramento has these. I'm sure Lodi has them. They're pretty standard in most police departments, aren't they, these days?
Yeah, they are a pretty standard piece of equipment. Yeah, Sacramento's been using theirs for a long time. They use the same as Elk Grove, and so that's why we're proposing to go with the same type of system. So we'll be able to share the data in the county.
Thanks for bringing this forward up here today with the presentation. Very good.
Does the county have the same system?
Sac County do not. They do not have license plate readers that I'm aware of, but the city PD does.
Well, thank you. I think it's a great tool for the officers out on the field, and I'm hoping we'll be able to pass it tonight.
Thank you.
Council, any other comments or questions?
Well, I'm really glad to see that we're getting these. These are fantastic. I did a ride-along for the purpose of observing him running the license plate. They refer to them as license plate readers as well. It's very interesting to see because it takes a physical picture of all the license plates, and it just instantaneously comes right up. And that gives them, keeps their hands free and allows them to pay attention to what's going on. This is a great tool, and this is something I was advocating for about 6 months ago, so I'm really glad to see it come forward, especially before I leave council, so I'm very pleased with this. And I hope in the future we can get a few more. So,
It would be great.
absolutely wonderful.
I've seen it too in other agencies.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you.
lifesavers.
Okay, is there a motion on the floor then?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
And double second? Any other further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Haynes?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Shelton?
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Which please?
Okay, next item, City Attorney's Office, Proposition 19, Marijuana Initiative.
Good evening, Council and Council members. I wanted to bring this item to you for consideration this evening. There's two parts to Proposition 19, which will be before the voters this November. The first part, which I think is getting most of the press, is that in the event that this measure passes, anybody that is 21 and older would have the ability to possess and use marijuana, to grow marijuana on their private property and up to 25 square feet, and to have in their possession up to 1 ounce. The second item, which I think is getting a little bit less coverage, is that if this measure passes, local governments will have the authority to regulate marijuana-related activities, and this would include the consumption of marijuana on commercial establishments, the sale of marijuana at commercial establishments, such as existing retail businesses. And one of the items that causes me some concern in reviewing Proposition 19 is that when you go into the measure and you review the purposes, there's a purpose that's stated that it is to ensure that if a city decides not to regulate the sale of marijuana, that buying and selling marijuana within the city limits remains illegal. But if you go into the actual measure itself, the actual statute that goes with Prop 19, there's no such language that says that. The change that would be made to the Health and Safety Code does include a provision that a local government may adopt ordinances to regulate the various commercial activities relating to marijuana. But it does not include that express statement that if you don't adopt those ordinances, that it continues to be unlawful. But there's a lot of businesses that currently exist where the city could choose to regulate them, but by virtue of not regulating them, it doesn't mean they're unlawful. You know, a good example is I was looking at the Sacramento City Code today, and in order to operate a miniature golf establishment in Sacramento City, you need a license. Well, you don't need one in Galt, and it doesn't make it unlawful to have that type of activity in Galt by virtue of not having a license. So my concern is that if we haven't regulated or we choose not to regulate, will the measure ultimately be interpreted such that any of those commercial activities would continue to be unlawful? Let me give you a specific example. You know, we've had some recent engagement with the Galt Wellness Center, which is currently closed. And one of the particular concerns I have is that if this measure passes on November 2nd, it becomes effective on November 3rd, that the Galt Wellness Center may become the Galt Marijuana Center and open the following day for sale of marijuana. And then if the city ultimately adopts a regulatory scheme, that business or any other businesses that have come up from November 2nd through the date that we adopt the regulation would in fact be grandfathered in. So there's a couple of options that the council could take at this juncture. One is to do nothing and to just take it on, take the proposition on its word under the purposes, and see what happens on November 2nd, and then if it does pass, to revisit whether or not we want to adopt anything. If we get into the issue that I was expressing, well, there's certainly an argument we would have because of the language I cited earlier. But I think another option that I wanted the council to at least consider before November 2nd is to direct that we prepare and adopt an urgency ordinance which would ban any commercial activity relating to marijuana. It would ban all retail sales. It would ban commercial consumption until such time as we can really revisit this issue and the council can decide post-November 2nd whether or not this is an activity that you want to license within the city of Galt, and if so, what regulations do you think are appropriate for our community? And I think that the adoption of this urgency ordinance would just add additional layer of protection to ensure that we don't have any businesses that are grandfathered in until such time as this council desires to license the activity. I think that it's pretty unusual to be taking this step at this point. I communicated with several city attorneys over the web system, and I can't find any city that actually has taken this step at this juncture. The way we would write it, if the council directed that it be prepared, is that if the measure does not pass on November 2nd, it would immediately expire. If it did pass on November 2nd, an urgency measure is good for 45 days. So assuming I brought this back for your consideration and you adopted it on October 19th, which is the last city council meeting before the election, it would be good for 45 days, and at the end of 45 days we would revisit whether or not you wanted to extend the ban. So unless there's any particular questions, I just wanted to bring this to your attention this evening.
Okay, thank you. Council?
I have a question, Steve. Say it were to pass in November, when would it actually take effect? Because this is a pretty complex.
The proposition would take effect the next day.
Okay.
So the question that it raises is that when it takes effect on November 3rd, assuming it passes, is in the absence of a local regulation requiring a permit, can a business open up and start selling marijuana without a license? That's the question. If you look at the purposes in Prop 19, the answer would be no. But if you look at the actual statutes that will become part of the law of California once this is adopted, there's no such language. It's silent on that issue. So I think it creates an ambiguity.
One of the concerns I have about the law, should it pass, is that although I don't know that we would see it immediately because there's really no oversight in any areas of this of distribution of marijuana. But what I ultimately think we're going to see is that, much like the tobacco companies, it's going to be manufactured. It's going to be in packs of cigarettes, and you're going to find it in your cigarette and tobacco shops. You're going to find it in your grocery stores, much like alcohol, and it's going to be shelved and it's going to be locked, and you're going to have to ask for it. How would our ordinance affect those types of businesses?
Well, let's presume that the city council decided that you wanted to authorize retail sale of marijuana.
Right.
Then part of your ordinance would contain a regulatory process where you would decide and determine what type of constraints needed to go along with that activity. Does it in fact need to be locked and behind a particular counter? In the absence of such a regulation, it might be available for retail sale and it might not be subject to those constraints. You might want to provide that only retail sales that are located more than 1,000 feet from schools and parks and other sensitive uses would be able to sell marijuana. You might want to add a provision that the sale could only occur during certain hours of the day. Those are the types of controls that the city would in fact be able to adopt if this measure passes. The concern is that if you haven't taken that step, could some retail establishment start selling on November 3rd, and then by the time we caught up with our regulatory scheme, contend, you know, we've already been doing it for 2 months, and we're grandfathered in, this doesn't apply to us.
Let me just say, I support what you want to do here. I really do. But I also see at some late date it's going to come back, and at some point in time, it's going to be manufactured in a different way. But because it's so unregulated at this time, and there's so much risk involved, I'm going to support the ordinance until such time the state has some sort of oversight over the production of it. So I think it's in our best interest to create this ordinance, and I'll support you on it tonight. I'm just saying in the future, I think what we're going to see is that this will be produced much like the other tobacco products, cigarettes, small cigars, and we very well could see this in our grocery store should it pass at some late point in time. But in the meantime, I think this ordinance would be important to us to keep until they get it organized and the state has their head together.
And I think just to emphasize, this is not taking a position on Proposition 19. It's not making a decision whether or not the sale or commercial use of marijuana in the city will or will not be allowed. It's just an effort to preserve local control until we can react post November 2nd. And if the council does support this, the direction would be to ask me to draft an urgency ordinance and bring this back for your consideration on October 19th.
I would just like to commend our city attorney and city manager for having the forethought to bring this up so that we're planning instead of reacting to whatever happens. I would definitely support what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I support it too. I think it's something that, like Stevie said, it gives us the local control at this point. Sorry, Mary Lou, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And this would make us proactive instead of reactive, and that's a good thing.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to be passed Prop
Motion's
19.
been made and seconded.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Call for the roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Haynes?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Shelton?
Aye. Next item.
Next item, an ordinance number 2010-07 of the City Council of the City of Galt repealing and readopting Chapter 8.40 of the Galt Municipal Code regarding noise control standards.
Mayor and council members, this is the second reading and proposed adoption of this ordinance. And if adopted, it would move the administration of the noise ordinance from a Sacramento County official to the City Community Development Director. It would put the city in control of requests for variances, and it would exempt public works projects from the noise ordinance. And unless there's any questions, I'd recommend that you move adoption of this ordinance.
Comments from council?
I have none.
None?
Move to approve the recommendation.
Motion's been made.
I'll second.
And seconded. No further discussion? Or is there any further discussion? None? Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Haynes?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Shelton?
Aye. Okay. Next item, G3.
solar power purchase agreement proposal at the Galt wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, I'll just introduce this really briefly. I've assigned our principal planner, Sandra Curiou, to take the lead on this effort. It's been something that we've had a lot of staff members involved with, and something that's been going on for a few months now, trying to look at different options and different ways we can possibly take advantage of solar power out at our wastewater treatment plant. It's been brought up by different citizens over the years and so forth, and we think we've come up with a way that might be doable and might be a cost savings for the city and its ratepayers over the long term. So with that, I'll pass it over to Sandy to give the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening. Back in June, City Council heard a presentation from Cal Valley Solar to develop, own, and operate a 2.4 megawatt solar plant at the city's wastewater treatment plant. In that proposal, Cal Valley Solar called for the city to make lease payments on the land or on the PV equipment in exchange for the use of all the power generated at that facility to offset the electric bills at the wastewater treatment plant. At City Council's request, the city manager and various staff members evaluated that proposal in detail and determined that it was not economically beneficial to the city, and we are instead recommending that the city undertake a more competitive process. We spoke with Cal Valley Solar, and we'll be inviting them to participate in that competitive process so that we can make sure the city and its ratepayers get the best possible price. The process we're talking about is sort of a new public-private partnership that's becoming a popular way of financing solar improvements for local governments, and it's called the Power Purchase Agreement. A PPA is similar to a lease agreement in that the solar plant would be built, owned, and operated by a private company, but instead of making lease payments to that company, the city would just provide them the land and then agree to purchase all of the power produced by the solar plant at a negotiated rate, typically over a 20-year period, which is the useful life for solar panels typically. At the end of the 20 years, the city could then elect to renegotiate that agreement, purchase the equipment, or just simply require that the equipment be removed. There are three main benefits to the private owner-operator associated with the power purchase agreement. One, they can take advantage of SMUD rebates, which are paid as a rebate on the capital construction costs of the facility. Two, they can claim a 30% federal tax credit for construction of solar power facilities that's only available to taxable entities, so it would be a useless incentive for the city. And three, they receive direct guaranteed payment at a negotiated rate from the city for all of the power that's generated at that plant, instead of SMUD receiving those funds, for example. The city benefits by being able to negotiate a price for purchase of power that's expected to be lower than that of the future SMUD rates over time. And that's because of the savings the private company can pass on to us because of the rebates. The city also incurs no cost for construction, operation, or maintenance of the system. Because of the critical state incentives and the SMUD rebates, a 1 megawatt facility is currently the most cost-effective system for the wastewater treatment plant project for a couple of reasons. One, SMUD's incentive structure offers rebates to customers who install solar power up to a maximum of 1 megawatt. Recent bids on other solar facilities have shown that projects that receive the current, what they call Step 5 SMUD rebate, which is $1.55 a watt, are competitive with projected future SMUD power costs. However, the rebate level in Step 6, which will become effective January 1 of 2011, is only $1.10 a watt, so it's less appealing to the private companies, and it's likely that that would actually, your power would cost more than just buying power from SMUD. The second reason for the 1 megawatt limit is that the state only requires utilities to permit a program called net metering for up to 1 megawatt systems. Now, net metering is basically when the meter can run either way. So if the solar facility is generating more power than is needed by the wastewater treatment plant, then, well, let me go the other way. When the wastewater treatment plant uses more power than the solar facility is generating, then we have to buy that additional power from SMUD. However, if the solar facility is generating more power than the treatment plant can use, the meter runs in reverse, and the city is allowed to sort of bank that credit for use later on when we actually use more power. The only caveat to that system is that over the term of a single year, a 12-month period, the net usage of energy from SMUD has to be more than the amount of power that is sold back to SMUD, or at least a net zero. So you either have to break even or use more power. The important point to remember tonight is that the city's ability to take advantage of these critical incentives is really dependent on demonstrating to SMUD that we have a firm commitment to construct this project by the end of this year. Not construct it by the end of the year, but have the firm commitment. Consequently, time is of the essence with this project. As we noted in the staff report, we spent time last month trying to forge a partnership with Sacramento County staff, with SMUD's assistance, that would have resulted in a joint request for proposals for both the Galt wastewater treatment plant and a similar facility in the county called the Vineyard Surface Water Treatment Plant solar project. Although they were very helpful and cooperative, we ultimately determined that the two projects were too dissimilar and that there would not be that many benefits from trying to do a joint project. It would probably actually be more confusing for the bidder or the proposers, and it would slow down the county's project. However, fortunately, SMUD is still willing to offer Galt the same Step 5 incentive through the end of this year that they gave the county, as long as we can give them that firm commitment. So it's important that we proceed as quickly as possible with doing a feasibility study and the request for proposals so that we can possibly commit to a power purchase agreement by the end of this year. In order to do that, staff is recommending that the city hire MWH consultants. They are the same ones that prepared the county's feasibility study and the RFP, and they've been working with the city on a preliminary analysis of the wastewater treatment plant project. Typically, we do try and get competitive proposals for consulting services. It's not a mandatory requirement for professional services, but unfortunately, there are certain time constraints that just make it infeasible to do that. Therefore, we're sort of relying on the fact that the county went through an extensive RFP process to hire their consultant, which is MWH. They had 7 responding consulting firms. MWH was the second to lowest proposer on that project, and they were thought to have the best qualifications overall. They have offered us a cost proposal for this scope of work that staff thinks is a good value, and they have committed to meeting the extremely tight schedule necessary for us to make a decision by the end of this year. The consultant scope of work is attached to your staff report. Basically, it consists of 3 steps. One is doing that feasibility study, making sure that the amount of power being used at the treatment plant is sufficient to make this work. We have designed that task in logical stages so that at any point along that road it's determined that this project's not feasible, then the city's expenditures will be minimized and we can stop the project. The second task is preparation of the actual request for proposals. The RFP goes to solicit bids from solar companies for a purchase power agreement and installation of a suitable solar facility. The solar companies then partner with a financial firm, and what you basically get is different proposals for how much they're willing to sell us power for. And then the third step is actually helping us evaluate the proposals, negotiate the power purchase agreement, and do some assistance with coordination of the photovoltaic system that's actually installed. Because this project's not currently budgeted, we do have a budget appropriation request in the amount of $87,500 plus a 10% contingency in case we run into unexpected expenses. So the total is $96,250. There are sufficient funds for this project in Fund 7, which is for wastewater, and it's estimated that these costs will then be recovered through the cost savings associated with the PPA. There will be some upfront staff time associated with the project. We've estimated that at about $15,000. So staff is recommending the City Council authorize the City Manager to execute a contract with MWH and approve the budget appropriation. We do have a minor amendment to the resolution that's attached. In the 4th clause, the first be it further therefore resolved and ordered, it should read that the City Manager is hereby authorized and directed in consultation with the City Attorney to prepare and enter into the contract and to expend funds within the approved not to exceed contract amount, and the appropriated contingency amount, semicolon, and. So that concludes my report. Glenn Grant with MWH is in the audience tonight if you have any questions of the consultant, or I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, we do have one speaker, I believe. So would you care to hear the speaker first? Public comment before we ask questions? Normally that's what we do.
Okay. Excuse me, John Slaughterback.
John Slaughterback, I live in the city. I like the idea of solar. It's good for the environment. I am concerned, do have some concerns though. One, here we're asking now for the citizens of Galt to put up $96,000 for a study. It did sound like that we would, maybe that would be refunded later. But is the mayor and the public works director endorsing this? And another thing that kind of worried me was time is the essence. Sounds like a salesman. It's got to be done right now, tonight. I would just like to remind council that this was brought forward by a dealer, solar dealer here in Galt. The city manager is bringing this back forward because of requested by council. Now, apparently they bought into it and they're recommending it now, but I thought it was brought back because of you requested it, but it sounds like they both bought into it. I'd like to hear them say they bought it into it. The citizens of Galt, I don't think, should have to subsidize solar power, but like I said, says that we would get this back. Residential sewer rates are already $51.45 a month. I'm afraid subsidizing solar power would increase the sewer rates. Before the city spends $96,000 of the citizens' money, the city needs to first determine if it's prudent to eliminate the settling ponds. The settling ponds cost the ratepayers millions of dollars, and we shouldn't just casually eliminate them because one person, a foreman, said the settling ponds are not being used. I don't believe management knows what the future holds for our wastewater problems. And in 5 or 10 years, the city may find that it needs these settling ponds. I haven't, like I said, haven't heard Public Works Director or the wastewater plant superintendent, anyone in management, upper management, agree with this foreman's evaluation. I'm not comfortable with the foreman telling us that it's okay to eliminate these settling ponds. The price of a feasibility study alone should make council question whether this project is worthwhile. If the price of the feasibility study doesn't deter council, then council should question if it's prudent to eliminate the settling ponds. Settling ponds were an integral part of the wastewater treatment plant and may be needed in the future. If council still thinks this project has some merit, then council needs more input about before making a final decision. I'm concerned about eliminating these settling ponds and wiping them out and just saying, well, we won't need them anymore. And I haven't heard the manager or Public Works state anything about that, but I'd like to hear a little more about this before you vote on this and spend $96,000. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Council, you have any questions or comments?
Actually, I did have a question that kind of went along with Mr. Slaughterback, and I was going to ask Greg how he felt about ponds 2 and 3 being used for this facility.
Public Works has signed off on the agenda report, and we endorse the project fully. The settling ponds or the additional spreading ponds that we have are there for retaining water With the move to year-round discharge, we no longer have to retain as much water as we've had in the past. And so I think it is a good use of the property that benefits the citizens to lower the electrical rates. We've had people from the public talk about for months now about how sky high the power rates are going to go. This is an opportunity now for us to save some money in that regard. We don't need the ponds. It's something that part of the study will look at which ponds exactly are the ones that make sense to put them, 1 and 2, 2 and 4. We're in the process of looking at that. Public Works fully endorses this project.
Vice Mayor, Mayor, let me just make a comment about the timing of this, because typically, we do like to make sure that we bring items back on a couple different occasions, especially when it involves expenditure of funds of this nature. This truly is very time sensitive. Technically, SMUD was actually already out of their Step 5 incentives, and through some arm twisting, we were able to convince them to give us that incentive. Without that incentive, we would not be able to do a solar project. And so, the only way they would guarantee us that rate is if we were able to give them a commitment by the end of this year. And the only way to do that is to get started on this thing tonight. And literally, unfortunately, if there's not a decision made tonight, the project would not be viable going forward, because we'd be moved up to the Step 6, which would mean that in all likelihood it would make the project infeasible financially. So I apologize for the short notice, but it was one of those kind of last minute deals that a deal fell into our lap. Often government is accused of moving too slowly. Occasionally we're accused of moving too quickly, but this is one of those cases where it's prudent and needed to move quickly in order to take advantage of the savings to the ratepayers.
Comments from any other council members?
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
okay, when I always see lots of money for consultant services, it kind of sets off a little alarm. And how long will it take to recover this money, these monies? It said it's recoverable, this $96,000. And also, if the consulting firm has already done something like this, and they're not starting from scratch, and time is of the essence, it seems to me like, some of the groundwork is already going to be laid for this. It's a lot of money, I think. I do.
It is, and we take it very, very seriously. I think the first part of your question was about how long it would take us to repay that, and we don't know, because we haven't gone out to bid yet. We don't know what the rates are going to be, so depending on what the rates are, that'll dictate how quickly the payback period will be. What we've been told is that the project is viable financially, would be able to cover the cost. How soon that payback would be, we won't know until we get the proposals back from the companies.
Well,
And so we can speculate.
Okay.
It could be 3 years, it could be 10 years. I don't know if the consultant wants to give some kind of indication based on other projects or other similar nature in the Sacramento region as far as what could be anticipated. But anything we say is going to be a guess, because we don't know until we get the actual proposals back.
It is recuperable.
Yes.
The,
Yes, that was one of the specific questions we wanted to know, is that, is this project going to be financially viable, and will it cover the cost of this initial investment by the city? And the answer was yes. The reason, for the cost, and the reason why you can't just take the RFP prepared for the county and kind of make a copy of it, send it out, is because there's a lot of work that goes along with the engineering at the site itself. You need to figure out where the electrical connections are, what the power usage is at our facility, all that kind of work you have to do up front that's very specific for our site, that is not relevant to the still work they've already done there. There is some work as far as the RFP itself that certainly can be duplicated, and that's built into the proposal and the project. And a lot of the work is not just, almost half of the cost is not preparing the document. It's once the award is done. It's negotiating with the company. It's managing and monitoring the construction of the project. It's through the whole life cycle of the project.
This is one of those necessary evils when you're talking about studies, and I understand $96,000 really is a lot of money, and I'm glad that Mary Lou had asked, because I want to know that we could recover the cost. It is a one-time cost, but there are a lot of benefits to solar energy, and we've discussed this in the past. And as I recall, usually we won't recover the cost of the solar until the later years, right? In the early years, it costs a little bit more, but in the later years, we'll be saving a lot of money. in the study, I'm sure they do it in phases, at some point in time in the study, if they realize that the cost benefit isn't there, are they able to stop the study? Will you be getting updates where you could say, okay, hang on?
Yeah, that's one of the things we built into the proposal with the consultant is very detailed milestones at the process. When they're doing the feasibility study, if there's any point in that process that they realize, hey, this isn't going to work, it's infeasible for whatever reason, the location, power consumption, whatever reason, then we'll stop it there and the work won't continue. And the beginning part of the work is not the most expensive stuff. So if you get to point 1, 2, or 3, you might have only expended $10, $15, or $20,000. It's not until you actually have awarded the contract and you go through the next step that you're going to expend the last $40,000 or so dollars. And so you should have there'll be definite milestones along the way that if it's looking like it's not going to be financially viable for the city, then we can cut our losses, so to speak.
And this is one of those cases where we just don't have the expertise in-house to be able to do this ourselves. So I do understand that. What I do like about it, well, first of all, I like the idea that we'll recover our costs. But more importantly is, when we look to the future, if this really pans out, it could provide a great deal of other opportunities for providing energy for the city. So I like this idea, but we really won't know if it's beneficial until the study comes back. So, but I'll support it tonight.
I would like to maybe hear from the consultant briefly, kind of about the financial viability of this project with the current SMUD incentive at step 5 and the likelihood of, kind of cost recovery on the city's investment.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I'm Glenn Grant with MWH, proposed project manager for this project. And I guess first to address the question of will this project pay for itself? As the city manager answered, we don't know the exact numbers at this point. We can't know those until we've received the specific bids from the solar providers. What we can say is what bids have been in the recent past to other cities and districts undergoing much the same process that you're considering this evening. And all of those that have received the Step 5 subsidy from SMUD have turned out to be cost effective. That the long-term net cost of power from the solar power purchase agreement is less than the projected cost from SMUD. As the city manager said, I can't give you an exact date as to when that difference in cost would pay back the cost for our part of the project. What I can give are some case histories from past projects. A project for the city of Fairfield, for example, was estimated that the difference between, they're in the PG&E area, not in the SMUD area, but the difference between what they expected to pay to PG&E and what they expect to pay for the solar system over the life of the project was about $2 million, a savings of approximately $2 million for exactly the same size system as we're talking about this evening. And the subsidy they were looking at, although it was from PG&E, was a very similar level of subsidy. So it's reasonable to expect that we would have savings, definitely savings, possibly savings up into that order of magnitude over the life of the project. There was a question earlier about can we benefit from past projects? The truth is, yes, we are benefiting from past projects. The costs of the work that we're talking about this evening on the first few projects like this that were done, actually they didn't even start doing this sort of project until about 3 or 4 years ago. Cost significantly more because there's a lot of groundwork to be laid, details about power purchase agreements to be worked out, etc. So the costs of the study that we're talking about this evening are actually going down over time, and you're seeing lower costs than what your predecessors saw a few years ago that started out for the lower costs for the studies to go through it. This is the sort of thing we're talking about this evening is something MWH has done for several districts and cities over the last several years. All of them have been at water or wastewater facilities. It just works out that there's a significant power consumption need at those facilities and often available land for solar. So it's an ideal facility to have a solar installation. Did I cover your question?
Can I ask you just one? The 2 million from Fairfield, just as a number, you wouldn't expect that for us because we're a smaller city. Is it based on population or use? I mean, it must be based on usage or.
As Sandra mentioned in her presentation, the ideal size for these systems is 1 megawatt.
So any size town would have.
And if you're what we believe is that the electrical consumption at the wastewater plant is sufficient to justify a 1 megawatt facility. So that's the facility we're hoping that will work out, will pencil out. That's one of the things that we need to determine in the feasibility study is, are the electrical demands of the plant sufficient to justify a 1 megawatt facility? And if they are, then you're talking about exactly the same size facility as Fairfield was looking at.
Is the study, is it labor intense?
That's all we do at MWH is labor, so it's all labor.
I asked that, the reason I asked that because I'm just looking at the task milestones is that this would come back to, we would accept this feasibility study on October 15th of 2010. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes.
So this would take approximately 6 weeks to do?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's been mentioned that we're talking about a very compressed schedule here to live up to the SMUD schedule that they've offered us. As the city manager said, the Step 5 subsidies really had already run out, and SMUD has agreed to extend them for Galt for the few months that we talked about until the end of the year. And so we're trying to meet that goal. And part of that is doing the feasibility study very quickly.
Any other comments?
No, I'm good.
No? Thank you. Solar power is the way to go, and I think the city, which we've had council members in the past, we all remember Andrew, Meredith, and Daryl both, pushed for solar. And I think it's a great opportunity, especially when you talked about the cost recovery of the project. So, okay, if there's any other questions, I'll ask for a motion.
Move to approve the recommendation.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded. Any further discussion? Nope. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne? Aye. Councilmember Haynes?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Shelton?
Aye. Thank you. Approved. And next item, please. Police Department.
Memorandum of Understanding with the Sacramento County Probation Department.
We have speakers for this, don't we? Right. Okay.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. My name is Brian Basuzi. I'm a lieutenant with the Police Department. I'm here before you tonight to recommend that you take public testimony on the proposed Memorandum of Understanding with the Sacramento County Probation Department. This proposed MOU would be for the time period from October 1st, 2010 through June 30th, 2011. I'd like to spend a few minutes to discuss the MOU, why it's being proposed, before asking that you take public testimony on this issue. As you know, in November of 2008, the citizens of Galt passed Measure R, which is a half-cent sales tax initiative to be used for public safety. The main focus for Measure R was to increase the staffing level for the police department so two community problems could be addressed. Those are gang-related and drug-related crimes and problems in the community. Shortly after the adoption of Measure R, the police department put a plan together to address these two community problems. More staff members were added to the police department so that we can take a more proactive role in addressing gang and drug problems. To date, 4 police officers, including 1 school resource officer and 1 dispatcher, have been hired using Measure R funds. Due to the economic downturn, the current sales tax revenue is not sufficient at this time to hire and sustain any additional full-time personnel. We began examining regional partnerships as a way in which to work more closely and collaboratively with our regional law enforcement partners. One of the benefits of this type of partnership is that resources can be shared. We thought that that was extremely important in these tough economic times. Through our efforts, we determined that working more closely with the Sacramento County Probation Department was something that would be very, very beneficial to the Galt residents in the city. We found that there are approximately 300 people living within the city's jurisdiction, or zip code, that are currently on probation for crimes that they have committed. People that are on probation have been convicted of crimes, and they've been given an alternative sentence in lieu of incarceration. And we have found that many of these individuals will reoffend. Based on the recent budget reductions by the Sacramento County and the Probation Department, the staffing levels will be severely reduced in the Probation Department. In discussing this problem with the Sacramento County Probation Department, we determined that it would be mutually beneficial to create a partnership where one deputy probation officer would be assigned to the Galt area. The probation officer would work out of the Galt Police Department and work very closely with our patrol officers and our detectives. So it'd be a 40-hour-a-week employee working at the police department, and that probation officer would focus on repeat offenders and gang members and drug dealers. One of the goals of this would be to reduce crime by more closely monitoring the probationers. The salary for our cost of the probation officer would be approximately $5,548 per month, or $66,576 annually. The city and county would review this partnership after 6 months. We would determine if this agreement would continue, if it was mutually beneficial and cost effective for both the probation department and the city. This expenditure falls within the goals and intent of Measure R, which was approved by the voters for police services. This particular partnership was not anticipated, nor was the downturn in the economy at the time Measure R was developed. Thus, this plan was not included in the expenditure plan. The initial expenditure plan calls for funding of 7 police officers, which includes 1 school resource officer and 1 officer assigned to the narcotics task force, and then 2 dispatchers. The probation officer is a similar position to the Sacramento County Drug Task Force outlined in Measure R. It involves a similar partnership, but under the new proposal, the employee would be the Sacramento County employee, not a City of Galt employee. So it basically would be a contract employee. The expenditure plan can be amended from time to time by City Council, but not until all of the initial positions are filled. That's the way the expenditure plan reads right now. It is likely to be years before we have enough revenue in our Measure R plan to fill all of the vacant positions. Therefore, we would basically have the money sit, and we wouldn't be able to spend it in our Measure R account. We feel that it's beneficial to act now and to be proactive and to do something innovative that hasn't been done in the county before. We went to the Galt Police Officers Association. They support this agreement. We also held a Measure R Oversight Committee meeting, and all of the members were present. They unanimously approved and support this proposition, this proposal. I believe that some members of the Measure R committee are here in the audience, and we also have Chief Don Meyer from the Sacramento County Probation Department in the audience to answer any questions you might have. In addition, Supervising Probation Officer Scott Wilson, and then Deputy Probation Officer James Junkett, who would actually be working in the City of Galt, is here to answer any questions if you would like. So I would like to to offer any questions that you may have, be able to answer those before you open it up to public testimony.
Yeah, one question is, I just want to get clarity, as I understand it, is we would split the salary, but the benefit packages would be on corrections, not corrections, excuse me, would not be on Galt.
The way the current MOU is written, that would be shared by both the city and the county.
City and county?
Yes.
Okay.
I was wondering, are there any special tools that having a probation officer would bring if we didn't have one?
Well, the probation department brings a lot of expertise and a lot of tools. One of the things we're actually talking about is they have 2 license plate readers in their cars. So instead of having 2 license plate readers, we would have 4 potentially. They do bring a lot of special knowledge. One of the things that police departments do, we're really good at suppression. We're good at making a lot of arrests and putting people in jail. One of the things the probation department is really, really good at is intervention and prevention. They're out testing these probationers, making sure that they're staying employed, making sure they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't reoffend. And so they do a lot of home visits. They're making sure that they know they're being watched and that they need to be law-abiding citizens if they want to live in the city of Galt.
Would that include juveniles?
Absolutely, yes. As a matter of fact, they gave us a breakdown of how many, or some statistical information. What we have currently is a little over 280 probationers. 181 are adults. 105 have drug history. 43 are narcotics registrants, 62 with prior drug arrests for drugs, and 9 classified as gang members. There are approximately 99 juveniles, 22 with current or prior drug arrests, and 15 of those are classified as gang members, 11 gang members, and 4 possible associate gang members. That's what we have right now. And that, of course, fluctuates month to month as we get people in and coming in and out of probation.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I think we have like 5 or 6 speakers.
I'll wait till after.
Okay. I didn't want to cut you off. I just
Thanks,
let us know that we have speakers.
Okay, Rick Walters.
Thanks, Lieutenant.
Good evening, Council. Rick Walters, and I live in the city of Galt, and I have a prepared statement. I was opposed to Measure R because I knew that our city council would have a hard time keeping its commitment of funding 7 police officers and 2 dispatchers. The issue tonight for new funding for a probation officer prior to completing the Measure R supports my position on this matter. As the city grows, there will be more sales tax money available in Measure R account to fund these types of expenses at a later date. This new funding proposal for a probation officer is not an emergency or a time-sensitive issue that deserves our immediate attention. In my opinion, the voters of Galt must have the ultimate authority as to how these funds are used for the safety of the community, not the city manager or this council. At this time, the committee's sole purpose is to oversee money in and money out of this fund. That's a Measure R oversight. However, when the funding of the 7 police officers and 2 dispatchers have been completed, there should be a new funding goal and strategy. Turning this job over to the council is, in my opinion, a bad mistake. There should be no council members on this committee because of a conflict of interest between city matters and oversight matters. Tonight I would like to present to this council and the public 2 examples of how public funds designated for one specific purpose can be manipulated and adjusted for other important issues. In 1992, the city required new home owners to pay approximately $500 for the cost of 1 water meter and the labor for installation. Years later, 18 to be exact, we have no water meters installed and the funding for these meters are in question. If history teaches us anything, it is this. don't allow city governments to have full and unlimited control over taxes and fees. In 2007, the city asked homeowners to pay a fee for upgrading our sewer plant. The upgrade consists of a filter and UV disinfectant system. As in Measure R, city staff has already recommended the possible transfer of money from sewer upgrade to the water fund before the facility is completed. I conclude that water meter upgrade, Measure R, and sewer upgrade have one thing in common. They are being used to fund gray area issues not covered in the original agreements. As long as city officials can show a nexus to the funding account, they feel that funds can and will be used for a variety of new and possible non-related costs. If this is allowed to continue, we as taxpayers will always be asked to pay more than our fair share. Now, researching government codes, I found out a few things. One, property-related fees may not be used for general government services or used for any purpose other than that for which the fee was imposed. Two, in Rossi versus Brown, the California Supreme Court observed that the local initiative power is actually greater than the power of the legislative body. Legislative bodies may not, by ordinance, bind future legislative bodies, but an ordinance adopted by the voters generally may be repealed or amended only by the voters, not the legislative body. And three, an ordinance adopted by the voters may not be amended or repealed by the local legislative body, even if the purpose of the amendment is to clarify uncertainties in the ordinance or to reach a situation not covered by the ordinance. So as you can see, I don't know what we're doing here. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no ambiguity in Measure R. So the question I have, Mr. Mayor, are you going to allow the citizens of Galt to vote on this, or are the four of you going to make the decision for us?
You already know what the answer is.
I asked the question. I don't know what the
I'll
answer
answer
is.
the question, because normally we don't get into conversations, but it will be up to the council to make that decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Al Baldwin?
Al Baldwin, I've been a concerned citizen of Galt for a long time, and it's a community of character, and you're willing to listen to us, so I'm here going to speak to you. I normally go with a lot of you, by the way, because I agree with many things that you've done, but there are a few times when I'm going against it. And this particular time is one of them. I guess the city manager's for it. I guess the police department's for it. The oversight committee is for this Measure R. So it seems like the odds are against me. But let me tell you, there is a lot of truth to what Mr. Walter said, too, by the way. Well, first of all, I want to throw this in the attorney's lap while I'm discussing it. Could Galt be sued in any way whatsoever, and can you promise that even if they were sued, we could win it? You can think about it. I'm not pushing it right now. Okay, using Measure R funds to hire probation officers, it seems like a MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, is like people trying to change the Constitution to fit what they want. If this probation officer is needed that bad, then use the city reserve funds or come up with some grants or start looking into it in other areas to bring it out of the general fund. If it's that important, and apparently it is that important because it's happening all over the county. Who checks on the people in Galt now? There's a few questions. Could Galt be sued, which I brought up now, using our funds? Can a probation officer carry a weapon or even arrest anyone? And apparently he can drive around in a car and check license plates, so possibly he needs a weapon. Are all the positions filled in our police department without the R funds? I'm assuming they are, but I don't know. I haven't had a report on it, but I'm assuming they are, so we could use funds to hire more police if we had more money. When we were trying to get Measure R passed, we were very clear on where and how the money would be spent. I was involved in it quite a bit. Mr. Haynes was involved with it, and Mary Lou was also involved with it. And we made sure, at least I tried to, that the city had to fill openings first before we could hire any more police, even if we had funds to do so. And that was part of the measure. We couldn't touch them if the city hasn't completed it. We wanted to be very transparent and very clear, because the previous time when Measure R was pushed, and I pushed it very heavily, I didn't have much support by people, and we were trying to get at least 50%, it didn't pass. And this time it passed with 62%. Actually, it was more than 62%. I think it was 65, whatever it was.
68 point.
Okay. And it was with the backing of the people, because they trusted us this time. There weren't anything in there. The lieutenant did a fine job of presenting it, but I'll tell you what, this probation thing has been going on for 2 years or more, and Measure R has been just under 2 years. So this had to be a factor when we were determining all this, because it was going on. It was going on in Sacramento, the county, and we should have known about it then. The police department was involved. They knew what was being cut all the time. It should have been put in this if it was going to be put in this. It wasn't. But you can tweak it, you can walk through it, you can find little loopholes wherever you want to when you need the money. If this is that important, I think the city could find a reason to have it. Lieutenant made a good point. He said there were so many people in Galt, probationers, I guess you call it. I have the facts right here, and it says 291. It varies off and on, but 291 for Galt. Little Isleton has 25, but Sacramento has 11,578. Citrus Heights has 1,084. Arcade has 1,419. Elk Grove has 1,135. What are they doing with all these cutbacks? If they've been cut back 40%, then I'd like to know how they're doing it before we initiate something that we might be criticized for or possibly sued if it does come around. And I would like to know for sure if you can unequivocally say that we could win a lawsuit if it does happen to happen. Our police department's doing extremely good right now, and I think if they've got this, they can afford to have a new system that reads license plates, that's going to help them even more, and it can even help drug offenders and safety. And they can get drug offenders license plates in Sacramento, and then they can transfer them here, and that would help us too. So if they can afford that in Galt, then we should be able to afford this out of our general fund or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Dan Jimenez?
Dan Jimenez, and I live in the city. Before I read my statement, I'd like to say that I never thought I'd say this, but I actually agree with you tonight, Al. I'm glad that we're on the same page on this one. Anyway, I'm against this proposal for several reasons. First, let me be clear. None of my objections has to do with the hiring of a probation officer. Let me go back in time a little bit. Before Measure R was voted in, I asked you, Don,
yes,
can this council ever use these funds other than what they were intended for?
Right.
You looked me straight in the eye and you said, and I quote, Dan, the beauty of the way this measure is written, they can't touch it.
And they can only use it to hire off.
Yet, here we are tonight. The proposal should never have been brought forward because I feel that the whole process is tainted, to be very frank. The paper clearly states, Measure R does not contain language authorizing this types of services as paid for by Measure R, an issue the city is hoping to work around. Since the funds to pay the salary currently exist in Measure R's account, an issue the city is hoping to work around. This last statement speaks volumes, that there's a movement to manipulate Measure R's funds for this proposal. Another reason I feel this issue is tainted because one member of the Oversight Committee has already publicly stated in the paper that the whole Oversight Committee is unanimously in support of this proposal. If that isn't bad enough, we have two council members, Randy Shelton and Mary Lou Powers, that are on that Oversight Committee, correct?
No.
No, I'm not.
You're not on it,
No.
Mary Lou?
I had to resign from it.
But were you
I
on it
was on it,
when
yes.
this thing was brought forward?
No, I was not on it when that was brought forward. I had already resigned.
Okay. Then I'll have to skip a little bit. So leaving that elephant in the room for a minute, I'd still like to come back to the stone cold facts that if approved, the funds will come out of Measure R, which in turn will put the funds further behind in hiring the full-time police officers that we thought we were voting for, which in turn flies directly in the face of what the voters were told and we put our trust in. At this time, I feel that the keys to these funds should not be handed over to the city manager, the Oversight Committee, and certainly not this council. These funds must stay intact the way they were intended to be. I'm asking this council not to violate the trust of the citizens by manipulating these funds. Jason may be right when he says worst case scenario, a citizen might sue the city because the letter of the law was not followed. A lawsuit that the city could ill afford at this time. And, that's it in a nutshell. I voted for this measure, and right now I feel that I was lied to if it goes forward. I mean, if this is such a good deal, you always find money for other little projects that you personally, each one of you like, and you always find the money for that. Find the money for this, leave our Measure R alone. We pay taxes. I don't want my money used for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Jim Connick?
I'm Jim Connick, citizen of Galt, live in town of Galt. I worked very hard on Measure R, and I was very much in support of it. And I was thrilled when I heard about the opportunity for us to receive a full-time person for part-time pay. Our police department, in my opinion, does not have many positions where they can pay for an experienced, knowledgeable person to do a professional job with part-time pay. The amount of money that we would be putting forth, in my opinion, during this short period of time would be bridging a gap. We don't have the money for a full-time person. The amount of time it takes and the amount of money it takes to put them through post-academy, train them, get them to the professional level that this person is, there's no comparison. And to have the opportunity to get an experienced officer, and we're looking at a period of time here which has been overlooked apparently by the previous speakers, but we're looking at a 1-year period of time. We're not looking at eternity for this particular position. It'll come back again, and by that time maybe we'll have the funds available in Measure R to hire a full-time person. And as I said, I worked very hard on this, and I feel that the use of these funds in this area is very justified because I feel it is moving us forward towards the goal that we wanted to achieve. With our agencies in the vicinity cutting back on their officers, I don't want to be the melting pot for a lot of criminal activity in the small town of Galt because we were not proactive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jerry Stripley?
Hello, my name is Jerry Stribling. I've lived here in Galt all my life, 64 years. I'm a citizen of the area. I live 300 feet from city limits. but I couldn't come in and vote for any of you, which I think is wrong. In this Measure R fund, it shows that they're by the city of, or not the city, but the Galt Herald. There's $323,000 in that fund, if their figures are right. Now, if there's $323,000, why haven't they filled more of the positions that this bill called for? I have pushed hard and told my friends that I'm strongly in favor of having an anti-drug and an anti-gang task force. I didn't con them, I asked them to vote for this, because I believed in it. And if you guys steal from this fund, it is totally wrong. Every one of you guys ought to be impeached if you do. I don't believe in it. I believe we need the probation officer. That is not a problem. There is not a soul in here that thinks we don't need them. But you guys have all bragged, city manager and everybody's bragged about how much money and how they've saved all this money for the city of Galt. Find it out of the general fund. Ask Inez. It's only $66,000. You just threw away $97,000 on a guy that's going to tell you what to do in 2 months. Hey, this is a good program. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a way you guys are trying to steal the money away from the public. I don't believe in it. It shouldn't happen. And if you do vote for it, I will strongly oppose anybody on re-election. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Any other member from the public wishing to speak on this item? You can come up to the podium if you wish. If not, I'll ask for comments from council.
Question for the attorney. On the issue that was brought up regarding the law, could we find ourselves in a lawsuit in the event we were to vote on this tonight, based on the initiative the way it was written?
Well, as the staff report indicates, it is a technical deviation from the expenditure plan. While it meets the spirit of intent of the Measure R, it is a deviation from the wording of the plan, and certainly anybody would have the ability to bring a lawsuit. The one additional point I do want to make is that there is language in the ordinance that says that the city council may amend or repeal this ordinance in any of its exhibits, but not increase or extend the rate of tax levied herein. So one of the provisions that would be available for the city council to amend, if you so desire, would relate to the use of the funds, the manner of revising the expenditure plan. Those are items that are not related to the rate of tax. So if you wanted to reduce the exposure under Measure R, but going forward with this program, then another approach would be to amend the ordinance before approving the contract. Are there any questions?
No. You know, I spearheaded that Measure R. I spent the first 2 years of council on this. I mean, I knocked on doors, I made phone calls. Al, you know I was there every night. I mean, I really invested. I got a lot of stock in this. When I looked at this and I read on this, and it is well within the spirit of Measure R, because the idea is to get more law enforcement on the street. And this is a very hard economy right now, and we're finding that we're having to partner with, well, not so much us, but other agencies have to partner in order to meet the needs for public safety and provide the services for other communities. Well, we're trying to do is the same thing, is if we can partner with another agency and we can bring in a full-time position that is solely going to be used in Galt, it's going to be a benefit to our community, it's going to be working with our officers, and it's not going to be a burden on us. It's not going to be an added cost in a sense of we're not squandering the money. I mean, we're not trying to use it for benefits or salary increases. We're actually trying to put somebody on the street to help with law enforcement. Somebody who's already trained, somebody who brings services, but brings skills and knowledge and experience with them. And it isn't very often you get an opportunity like this, and I'm really saddened in it. And I'm surprised that we would have such objections to it, but I also understand, you know, people, when they vote for something, they want it to mean what it says. And I really feel, or at least I thought, and still believe, that it is well within the spirit of the way Measure R was written. I don't think that we're robbing anything from anybody. I think what we're doing is we're providing a benefit to the community, and I think that safety issue is more important to me than anything else. If we were up here wanting to use the money to buy equipment or to increase salaries or do anything of that nature, I wouldn't even agree to it. But I think that this is important, that we get another officer on the street. And we do have crime and we do have problems. And I think this is a proactive approach to addressing those issues. So I'm really saddened when I heard tonight. I obviously don't want to get into a lawsuit, and I don't want us to be sued over this. But I think the benefits are important, and I think we have a lot to be gained from it. So I'm just, you know, I'm at loss of words over it.
Any other comments from council?
Yeah, I want to say pretty much the same thing. I really agree with Don on a lot of this. You know, I was on the Measure R Oversight Committee, and I think they're doing a great job so far. They've done everything that they've been asked to do. You know, we did this measure for our police department. Our police department came to us tonight and asked us to help them out with what they need. I am going to support our police department. You know, I've heard from our lawyer, there is a clause in there that says we can do it. You know, I work in my organization with MOUs. I find that you partner up with somebody that really knows more than you know or can help you learn more. It's really beneficial to everyone. The city needs all the help we can get, especially where our police force is concerned. We don't have enough. We already know we don't have enough. So, you know, this measure was written for our police department, and I totally support them.
I would like to ask the city attorney, if I understood you correctly, the initiative said the city council could make an amendment to the initiative.
That's correct. It said that the city council could amend the ordinance as long as you did not increase or extend the rate of tax levy. So one provision of the measure, which has been talked about in the staff report, is that the council may not amend the expenditure plan until such time as all new police personnel as proposed in the current plan are funded. That is in the current ordinance. Well, that's a non-tax measure, so that's an item that if the council desired to change, whether it be now or in the event that there was litigation relating to this particular issue, after litigation evolved, that's an item that is within your authority to change.
So the initiative said that we could not make an amendment until all of the places had been filled? Is that what you just said?
The original measure included an expenditure plan that required for the hiring of the 7 officers, and it said that the council may not amend the plan until such time as all of the new police personnel proposed in the current plan are funded. So that's what went before the voters. That's how the plan and the ordinance currently reads. The council, one of the other things that was in the ordinance that went to the voters was the provision that says that the city council may amend or repeal the ordinance but not increase the or extend the rate of tax. So every part of this ordinance, except for those provisions that relate to the amount of tax and the length of the tax, can in fact be amended without going back to the voters. The voters gave the council that particular authority.
But it seems like the wording was very clear that you can't amend that, you can't make an amendment unless all of the positions are filled. I think that's what I heard, that we cannot make an amendment. I mean, at some point, we have the...
It sounds like it's two different...
Here's the distinction. There's an ordinance and there's an expenditure plan. The ordinance says that the council may not amend the expenditure plan until the officers have been hired. The ordinance gives you the authority to amend the ordinance. One amendment could be to strike that limitation. Now, that's you know, I'm not commenting on the political implications. I'm telling you that as a matter of law, you would have the right to do that.
Well, you know, my feeling is that this police department is doing a great job. I support them totally. But what I'm hearing, it attacks the integrity of the council to go against what the voters voted on. Even though I think it's worthwhile, common sense tells me it makes good sense. We're getting another person for half price. But again, it seems like even though it's a good deal, it's not what we
Agreed.
what the voters agreed to. So, you know, that's all I can say.
You know, this is really a short-term solution. This is the way we're looking at it. We're at least 2 years away, and somebody asked the question, well, if you get over $300,000 in the fund, why aren't you using it? Well, the idea is that for that fund to be beneficial, it has to be enough to cover the cost of one position, their salary and benefits and so on, for at least ongoingly for each year, and it hasn't been able to do that. And in order for us to do that, we're going to have to see a reasonable increase in our sales tax revenue, and we're not going to see that maybe for at least 2 years, if then. And I really looked at this as a short-term solution, and I thought, and I really believe, and I still do in all my heart, that this is the best, what's best for the community. And I really believe that with all my heart. But Dan put me on the spot, and I gave my word. And I really feel, Dan, that if I voted for it, Dan, I still feel I would be within my word, but I don't want to deviate from that. And I came here tonight in full support of it. And in my heart, I still support it. You know what I mean? But my word means a lot to me, so it puts me in quite a position. Thank you. So, well, you hit a chord. But, you know, I like I said earlier, I'm really saddened by it because it is a short-term solution. It is a benefit to the community. And really, when I look at it, to put another officer on the street with the resources that he brings, I really think that this would be really beneficial in all my heart. There's no question about it. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, can you just go over those two? Are there two separate ones? I mean, that's what I'm not...
It's a little bit ambiguous, but I think really what it comes down to, at least for me, it really comes down to how the public interpreted it. And I really felt, and again, you called me on it, but in my heart, I really felt that that's how the public would interpret it. That's why I took the position that I did.
I have a question. Is there any way in this point, because of the budgeting, that we can take this money out of the general fund for that short term that we just discussed? No, I'm just asking the question. Okay.
We've tried that before.
Is there...
Yeah, I mean, the council can use the general fund for purposes it sees fit.
I know we normally don't like to do that.
And we do have, you know, reserve amounts that have been declining over the last several years because of the economy. We've had, you know, 13 frozen vacant positions, we have furloughs in the city, employees are, so we're cutting and we're doing the things we need to do, and so we're trying to preserve as much of that as we can. But in answer to your question, yes, it's an eligible expense for the general fund. The reason we were recommending it for Measure R is because there's not enough funds in Measure R to fund another full-time officer. We need to have enough on an ongoing basis. Just because we have money built up in that Measure R fund, in 3 years, that $300,000 is gone with a full-time position.
Right.
And then we're going to be in a situation where we've got to lay that person off if we don't get enough revenue to maintain that on an ongoing basis. And so we've got some money that has been built up, and the choice that we looked at in consultation with the police chief and his staff was, we can let the money sit in that account and do nothing and not benefit the community, or we can present a proposal, not trying to hide anything, not trying to mislead the public. We wanted to reach out to everybody. We wanted to reach out to the newspapers, come in front of the city council, not even to take a vote tonight, to get public input, talk to the Measure R committee, and see if this is something, because this is it was a vote of the people. We wanted to reach out to as many people as we could to see if this was something that the public felt was beneficial to use for their Measure R dollars. And if the ultimate decision is no, it's not the right thing, then we certainly respect the voice of the people and the voice of the council. We thought it was at least a worthwhile thing to bring forward as a proposal, because we honestly believe that it will benefit the public safety and combat drugs and gang problems in our community, which is what the voters voted for Measure R for. And so we thought it was a reasonable proposal to bring forward on a short-term basis, to use some of those funds. Instead of having them just sit in the bank account earning interest, we can have that money in the form of an officer on the street doing good. But it's certainly a reasonable debate and argument to have this conversation with members of the public, among council members, to see at what cost, as far as Vice Mayor Payne suggested, the integrity of the council and so forth. I don't believe it's a matter of integrity, but it certainly is a matter of choice and opinion, and what the council believes is ultimately in the best interest of the community, whether it's upholding the letter of that law and the ordinance that was passed by the voters, or abiding by the intent of that and the principle and the spirit of that law and putting those officers in the street. And there's certainly reasonable room for debate. Reasonable people can have differing opinions on the same issue.
Sure.
And so we wanted to at least bring it forward and have the public open discussion and debate about it.
No, I think it's very fair. It's very worthwhile. I would like to see it, but I think right now, if I propose the question, I'm not sure it would be yes, and I'm not sure it would be no.
Well, I have another thought too, and it's just, when people vote, they're not all, a lot of people will just look at that Measure R and say, oh great, it's more money for police, I'll vote yes. I'm here to wager that not every person that voted yes on Measure R read everything about it. I mean, I'd like to think that they do, but I know when people, go to the poll and they just kind of see what it's for, it was for helping our police department. And I know how this kind of stuff goes, because I do this every day. I change my budget every day depending on what the county's doing and what the city's doing, and sometimes you just have to change things around and make things work.
Well, you get caught in a situation like this where you're either within the spirit of the law or you're to the letter of the law. And, I'm not a politician. I said that when I first got up here, and I haven't been. And I'm out of here in 3 months, so I got nothing to gain or lose about how I vote, other than I have to vote with what I believe to be accurate or what's in the best interest. Like I said earlier, I came in here to support it, and I don't want to let our police department down, because I support them 100%. But if I can't get the very people who supported this Measure R and walked for it and called for it to support it, I don't think that I'm going to be able to support it. I mean, my word does mean something to me, even though I feel like my word's good. But if you're going to call me on it, and there's enough people there not supporting it, you know what? I'm going to have to go and lean with the support of the people. Even though I think the best route would be to get the position, but I will, under these current circumstances, I think I just have to go with how it was interpreted and what they expect of me. So.
Okay, well, seems to me, I'll weigh in with the attorney here in a moment, but we have two choices. One is I may either propose the question or council's going to agree to send it back to staff for further discussion and bring it back, at another date. I'm ready to vote, but
Before we do that, Jason, we can borrow funds from either whether it be the general fund, and we can borrow from one fund to the next and to meet the needs of a certain need, right? Are there any other alternatives out there other than using? I know we can't use the general fund because we've seen where it's going. We know that we're eating it away, and that we've got it under control, but we've got to maintain. Is there any other possible way that we might be able to meet the needs of being able to hire that position versus having to go out and partner?
The question is whether we can, other additional funds besides the general fund or Measure R that we can use for the position.
Yeah.
And, there are certainly potential opportunities out there through various grant opportunities. Whether the city would be successful in securing those grants is unknown, but it's certainly something that we could look at down the road. I know there was somewhat of a time sensitivity on this, given the reductions and so forth with probation, but it doesn't mean that this couldn't be an item that would be discussed and this partnership couldn't be brought forward at the future. I think at this time, really the council has three options, in my opinion. The first would be to use Measure R funds for the proposal.
Right.
The second would be to use money from the city's general fund reserve, with the hope of potentially one day finding, or looking for additional funding sources in the future to fund it. It is somewhat of a short-term solution, so the exposure and expenditures from the general fund would something that we could cut off within 30 days. So let's say, for example, that we use general fund and the end of the current fiscal year, things in the economy continue to get worse. We're forced to make more significant cuts across the city and so forth, or even before then, we could simply cancel the MOU with the county, and we wouldn't incur any additional future costs. That's the benefit of the MOU versus actually hiring a person. It's much more difficult to lay off an officer as opposed to just simply canceling an MOU. And so that's the second option. The council could use general funds, knowing that the current status of the general fund. However, there are funds there, the rainy day funds that have been set up for this type of expenditure. The third option is to simply do nothing at this time, look for additional grant funds, and potentially bring this proposal back at a future date.
What about a limited term position? We got $300,000+. Would we be able to stretch this out for a 3-year limited term position under Measure R?
Or actually hiring
an officer?
an additional officer?
Yeah, under Measure R.
We could sustain, hiring a full-time officer, like you said, for a few years. At that point, you'd be kind of taking a gamble that the tax revenue would increase sufficient to retain that officer. And so possibility that you could hire somebody on a temporary basis over a 2 or 3 year period when we know the funding is available, and the person would have to be hired with the knowledge that that position may go away in that period of time if the revenues don't increase.
Right.
So it's certainly an option we can explore. You may not get the type of candidate that you want because you're not going to be getting somebody that's going to be leaving from another agency to come here if they know that the term is only good for 2 to 3 years. You don't know what type of candidate you might get, but it's certainly, that is another legitimate option that we could talk about and explore.
I think that is an option we should, because I would think that within 3 years, potentially we could have somebody retiring. I mean, somebody could be leaving. I'd be interested in exploring that or some other alternative to fill that position. I think that would be very beneficial, and I think that would probably be our best bet at this point.
Jason, it's interesting, before the council meeting began, I asked Inez, I just received the budget on a brief or whatever it was called. And I said, Inez, I'm kind of concerned about this. And she says, oh, no, we're doing better than what I had predicted. So I would ask Inez, how much better did we do than what your conservative estimate was? And if it's significant, I would say we would probably have to agendize this for the next meeting, that we look at funding this person from the general fund, knowing that we can, 30 days, we can cut it off if things start taking a nosedive. But Inez has got that information for us.
Actually, the comment was in regard to the property taxes, is that from the preliminary information for fiscal year ending 10 were more positive than what we had originally estimated. So our property tax came in higher. During the year, I felt I was being very conservative in some of the estimates presented to council and to the community, and I was probably just a little bit more too conservative in that one. So I think our revenues actually in the general fund are probably less than $100,000 to the good, but that's still definitely good news as opposed to coming in under the estimate. So that was definitely positive news. So in the comment about the budget in brief, it did present that we are using reserves to balance the budget. But the good news is that our property tax revenues did come in higher than anticipated. So we are planning on bringing an update to council next month on fiscal year ending fiscal year 10.
And sales tax was a little better too?
Sales tax was a little better. We are anticipating, our current estimates still show that they are going down, but our community did see an increase in taxes last year. I believe the estimate was just around $50,000 to the good. So definitely positive. I have the tendency of being conservative, understanding that we're trying to balance hiring different positions or not making cuts if not necessary, but $150,000 in the general fund, it's still pretty close. So
maybe it was meant for me to ask you that question.
Well, and certainly it looks like we're still kind of doing the year-end stuff, that we are going to be a little bit better off than what we projected. But keep in mind that what we originally projected was $1 million coming out of our reserve. Right. And so the fact that we pick up $150,000 is certainly good, but it certainly doesn't mean that we're over the economic downturn that we're in right now. Right. But one of the things, if the council is interested in exploring that as an option, I think one of the things that's written into the MOU is a 6-month evaluation period of the probation officer position that the council is interested in appropriating funds for that initial period of time and then kind of revisiting that and seeing the financial condition of the city and in that partnership and see what we might
Are you talking about funding it completely under Measure R? Or are you talking about partnering?
Talking about general fund, it would have the same partnership with the county that we're proposing tonight, which is splitting the costs of that position with half with the county, half with the city. And if what I'm hearing from the council is an interest in instead of using Measure R funds, using general fund dollars to fund that city's half of that position.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Even at the same time, look for those grants that we have a possibility of finding.
I would be good with that. As long as we're not using the Measure R funds, I would be good with that. That's an good alternative. And that would give us plenty of time to figure out what we will, an alternative to maintain, or keeping the position, in other words, ongoingly. I'd support that.
Don't we need to bring that back?
Yeah, we can continue that to the next meeting, where we can bring back the appropriation and authorization out of the general fund and so forth, if it's necessary.
And
kind of the consensus I'm hearing from council.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I had said when we started, and it sounds like we're all agreeing, but also and possibly seek other funds.
I agree.
Other money.
All right.
Does that make sense, Steve? Okay. I was hoping we'd be able to get the vote and get the position tonight, but I mean, good questions came up and good concerns.
It was very good.
This was the exact intent of this conversation, is to reach out to the people and find out what the concerns were, what people thought of the proposal. And what we've heard is we think it's a great idea. It's just maybe the funding isn't the appropriate source, and so certainly it's within the council's purview to determine for the proper use of funding for this. And we'll go forward with that, and we'll bring it back to the next council meeting.
Okay.
I'd like to thank the probation officers that are coming down and the police department and
Yes,
the members of
thank
the
you.
public for speaking. Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Well, we'll bring that back in 2 weeks.
Okay. Next item, railroad quiet zone.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. At the July 20th council meeting, council approved the allocation of $10,000 in CDBG funding for the Lincoln Way parking lot. They approved $260,000 for the Central Galt Corridor Rehabilitation Project. Council deferred approving money for the streetlight retrofit program in possible favor of a railroad quiet zone study. At that time, you asked the staff to bring back some additional information regarding the study. I spent some time doing some research and found out that a little bit more about quiet zones and just how they're established. Your staff packet includes a number of issues and characteristics that quiet zones are dependent on: the daily train traffic, train speeds, the number of vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycle traffic through the crossing, the geometrics and configuration of the layout, the number and type of the gates and the signal equipment, traffic lanes, the number of train tracks, and also the 5-year relevant accident history. As typically the train traffic, accident numbers, and the pedestrian vehicle traffic vary over time, this means that railroad studies have a specific shelf life. That was one of the questions specifically asked by council. Once you do update a crossing to a quiet zone standard, then you have to go back every so often, 3 to 5 years, and reevaluate that crossing in accordance with new Federal Railroad Administration standards in order to maintain that quiet zone status. You take all this information about the crossing and you load it into a Federal Railroad Administration quiet zone calculator. You calculate a risk index for the crossing. You do this once for the crossings with the horns blowing. You do it once for the crossing without the horns blowing. You compare these indexes with the national standard, what is the average risk index for a crossing that has the horn blowing. In order to establish a quiet zone, the index for our crossing without the horns has to be at or below the higher of the other two. So what you have to do is basically show the Federal Railroad Administration that the risk of your crossing is significantly lower than the average in the nation without having horns blown. I did some very preliminary calculation based on the information that I had. I cannot confirm anything with the railroads relative to a quiet zone for the main UPRR line through Galt. Based upon the calculations, we do have to make some additional improvements in order to establish a quiet zone. The specific types of improvements are detailed in your agenda package. They include very simple channelization, median islands, and more complex roadway geometrics and gate improvements. Those can get pretty expensive. Based upon the preliminary information, it appears that the mountable medians with reflective channelization devices, basically the cones, that I think we saw in a picture that was provided to council, would result in indexes that are low enough to warrant a quiet zone. The calculator also provides an estimate of the cost to do this, and for all 4 crossings, it provided a cost of about $65,000. That's adequate. The number's a little bit low, but it is a significant reduction in what some of the more costlier improvements have been relative to full median islands, having to put in activated gates through the railroad. I do want to point out that the Union Pacific Railroad does not endorse quiet zones, so that they do comply with the provisions of the Federal Horn Rule. The UPR believes that they compromise the safety of the railroad, their employees, customers, and the general public. And they do go along, but they encourage the use of the more complex and therefore more costly engineered safety measures rather than the simple channelization type devices. In order to move forward, the city will have to enter into an agreement with the UPRR to reimburse the railroad for all of their costs to be included in the project development and for their design costs. The agreement requires a $10,000 per crossing signal location as a deposit to work against. The city will also be responsible for all construction costs and all future maintenance costs of whatever improvements are required at the crossing. The staff is encouraged that there may be a cheaper alternative than what was previously presented, but the only way we're going to really know about this is to move forward with the study to get updated information from the railroad, talk about current traffic as well as future projections of traffic at general plan build-out, the future number of trains, do analysis both of the current year and at projected build-out to see what the crossings would warrant. There is no direct fiscal impact. Tonight, the council wants to direct us to program money toward a quiet zone. Future expenditures will be brought back to the council as appropriate as far as actual spending of funds through contracts. The current 2010-2011 city budget includes $200,000 in each of the 2 budget years. We also know that 2012 calendar year CDBG funds are available, so we're recommending that we appropriate the 2011 CDBG funds into the current fiscal year and allocate the 2012 funds, which are currently not in the budget, into the 2012 year to backfill that. Basically, this would give us a total of $400,000 in the current year and $200,000 in the second year in terms of funds that we can expend. In terms of expenditures, staff is asking that council confirm, again, it was $10,000 of CDBG money for the Lincoln Way parking lot, $260,000 for the Central Galt corridor, $55,000 for the streetlight retrofit project, and $75,000 to implement a railroad quiet zone study. Other than the CDBG funds, staff has not identified any other funds for a quiet zone. Some alternatives the council has and can consider is to direct staff to complete the quiet zone study in-house. It's not recommended due to the negative impact on the delivery of our other projects and the specialized expertise that's needed in order to process this through the CTC and the UPRR. We also believe there are funds to hire the consultants, which would be good expenditure of those funds. You can direct us not to undertake a quiet zone and allocate all the remaining costs to provide additional streetlights. You could also not allocate the streetlight funds and direct staff to hold that in reserve once we complete the study to put it toward the actual improvements of a quiet zone. That completes my report. I would have to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? I think we have 1 speaker or 2.
Have 1.
Okay. Would you like
Hot?
to hear the speaker first?
Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Hodge. I'm a resident of the city of Galt. In some ways, this subject is small potatoes compared to the responsibilities that the city has for trying to maintain law and order. However, it is an important issue. And as you know, I've been before you many, many times over the last 2 years advocating that we do this study. I want to commend, first of all, a couple of people. Jason Behrman for having the vision to know that if the city of Galt is really going to grow in the future and you want to really improve the Old Town area, we really do need to do something about the train. Greg, I know you had to spend some time doing your homework because I've been looking at this stuff for a long time. His recommendation is an excellent one. And I would add that not only do you spend the $75,000 to hire the consultant to do it, because this is a very, very complex engineering issue, and I know Greg doesn't have the staff to do it. Not that he couldn't do it, he just doesn't have the staff and the time, but it's complex. But I would recommend that while you're doing this, that you look at doing 2 studies and see if, because the economy is not as robust as it should be, that you might not be able to find an engineering company willing to take this on. Because you have a second quiet zone that runs east-west. And it really does need to be considered and planned for as well. It needs to be done jointly. If you'll remember from my presentation last time, in the city budget, Jason, there's got to be like 10 or 12 items in there that have to do with city crossings, sidewalks, and improvement. If you don't plan all the way through ahead of time, then you're going to make an improvement somewhere, and you're going to come back a year later, and if you approve the expenditure, you're going to tear out what you just did and redo it. And we don't have the money to redo stuff. So the east-west corridor does need to be included, and we have 2 reasons why we should really think about it. One is that the Marengo crossing wouldn't be done on our dime. Now, it might not be done right away, but ultimately the builder is responsible for that improvement. Second, Carillion Boulevard, which is a major crossing, is really almost compliant. It's got the medians in place. There are some improvements that have to be done with the crossing signals, but that would be taken care of. That leaves you really one major crossing, and that's that ugly, ugly crossing up here at Amador, where the trains come across. So I would encourage you to seek the quiet zone study for both. However, with that said, the north-south corridor is absolutely required. You can't go any further until you do the study, and you know that. And he's presented all of the facts to you as succinctly as he could. The quiet zone rule is a very complex one. Now, here's the sad thing about this. Prior to 2005, you wouldn't have had to jump through all these hoops. But when the Federal Railroad Administration did this ultimate take care of the population safety study and required that we do this, they did it for one reason. They did it because the railroads did not want to be on the hook for the liability for some idiot to drive through the crossing. That's the whole reason behind the 2005 rule. Now, they'll tell you it's about safety, and it is, but there are some things you can't do. You can't engineer human beings to use common sense all the time. So even if you don't do a quiet zone, you're still going to ultimately get somebody hurt or possibly killed on one of these crossings. They'll jump over a fence and walk down the tracks and ignore it or whatever. But that should not put the citizens of Galt, some 25 to 30,000 people, through having to listen to 30 or 40 trains go up and down this track day and night. For the first time in my life, I take a sleeping pill. I've never had to do that. I run 3 miles a day and usually don't need it. So what I'm asking to do is to consider what he has proposed. It's a really important thing, and I urge you to vote for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Singleton.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Singleton. I'm a citizen of Galt. Evening, council members, staff. I just want to say a quick word to this quiet zone. I am in favor of us, if we could have the study done. Most people come over to my house think I'm hard of hearing, but it's just because I have to have my TV up so I can hear it when these trains go by. On the phone, it's very hard to have a conversation with somebody, and I'm sure y'all run into that. So I'm really just up here to urge and encourage you to see this through so that we can get the study done. And our town, you know, I'm looking to the future of what's going to happen here in Galt, and I think that our population eventually will turn around and we will start getting people back in this town, and that will only bring the attractiveness to this town, so though we do have a quiet zone coming through here. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
That's all the speakers should have.
Comments from council? John?
I just want to make sure of something here, is that we're asking for the quiet zone study for $75,000, and there still would be an additional $55,000 for streetlights. My biggest thing is those streetlights are a priority, because we've gone to the neighborhood. I've been to the neighborhood watch meetings. We've been to the National Light Out. We've done this. We've made this promise since I've been on council, and I've been here nearly 4 years. So, in my opinion, I don't want, if there's money there to do this study, once the lights, you have the funding for the lighting, I'm okay with it, but that lighting has to be the priority.
We actually have more than $55,000 for the lighting. The $55,000 was actually kind of an addition to what we already planned on doing. If you council recall, we received energy efficiency block grant funding this last year, about $138,000 that we're going to put on the street light renovation retrofit project, and so this would be an additional $55,000 on top of the $138,000 that would allow us to do more streetlights in our community. So using the CDBG funds wasn't something we originally planned on, but when we took a look at $400,000 that we have available this year, we kind of looked at what projects might be eligible. We said, hey, the quiet zone, and then some additional streetlights, because we knew it was a priority of the council. Let's add some more on there on top of that energy efficiency block grant program. So we'll be able to do quite a number of streetlights and still have money left for the quiet zone.
All right, just as long as those streetlights are first and foremost a priority, I mean, for me at least, I'll support it.
So we're talking $190,000 something for the streetlights, for retrofitting, for efficiency.
Right. I would just like to say, as a person that had a gift shop on the corner of C Street and 4th Street, and the fact that the city manager does have a vision, and I go along with it for that part of town, when the trains would go by my shop, it would shake the shelves so badly that things would actually fall off of them. And not only that, but exactly what Mike said, when a train would go by, I couldn't talk on the phone or talk to customers. I live not too far from the railroad tracks, and I'm used to it. They don't bother me. They don't keep me awake. But if we ever want to really develop Old Town, and we've already started, we've got apartments going in there. We've got hopes of having a fine steakhouse in the old Oddfellows building. I think that we would be foolish not to consider that as part of our plan. So if we can get the streetlights and do this, I would be supportive of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of my other council members. When I was on the planning commission, the quiet zone was a really important issue for us too, for the reasons Barbara said, with that new senior complex up there, and we'd really like to build downtown, but nobody wants to sit at a nice little restaurant and get blasted out every time the train goes by, and I'm hoping that that gets developed down there, and that we do get a really nice restaurant or steakhouse and some other shops underneath where the senior citizens complex is, and I think it's really important that, you know, it's not a noise zone. So I've been agreeable with that for a long time, my own self.
So the 75,000, that's for the study, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we should be doing, if we end up doing it, we should be doing all the crossings. Don't we have like 8 total?
There are
North, south.
Yes, there are a total of 8. We would recommend that we proceed with the study in 2 parts, at least find out what it would cost to do the main line with its crossings and then the spur track.
Does that include cost?
That would include cost. It would be within that. The whole thing would have to be designated a quiet zone. We did not include the crossing of the Twin Cities at this point, but that's something we could. Yeah.
Spring and then Twin Cities?
Right.
Okay.
We could extend that. But we look at doing all the crossings, at least get the proposals and see what the cost break would be to have them go ahead and do the work for the spur line. I was not able to find a lot of information about train traffic. The Korean crossing is not even listed on the FRA's inventory of crossings, so they don't even know it exists.
Oh.
So
they know Marengo does, right?
Marengo's listed, but Korean is not. So
oh.
we would recommend going forward, at least looking at that and seeing how those calc out. From a cost standpoint, they're relatively inexpensive, but there's not a lot of train traffic either.
And we have a projected cost per, I know some of them, it sounds like I know we've done some work on some of them, but average cost would be about how much, do you know?
The actual improvements?
At this time, I mean, just...
At this time, well, based on just using the channelization, it's $65,000 for all 4 crossings, so that's an average of $15,000 to $17,000 per crossing. I think that's probably a little bit on the light side. If we get involved in having to move gates and put in new electronics, it could be upwards of $300,000-$400,000 per crossing.
Plus.
Right.
Okay. So it could be...
I'm cautiously thinking it will probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 or 50 per crossing. But that's just really a speculation at this point.
Okay. I'm for doing the study. I'm like Don. We got to have those lights.
Absolutely. We made that promise 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We'll be long gone, Randy, before it may happen, but
That's true.
we know we did the right thing.
That's right.
But you can drive by and see
Yeah.
it. You're not leaving town yet.
Okay, well, is there any other discussion or comments? If
No.
not,
Very good.
I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
We got a
And I'll
first,
second.
and we got a second. Okay. Any further discussion? None? Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor King?
Aye.
Councilmember Haynes?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Shelton?
Aye. Approved. Okay, is there any communications? We did have a few meetings. Only Jason and I know about it.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Yep, we do have one communication from our Public Works Director, Greg Holiday.
I have one. Ms. Maybe come join me, please.
Drum roll.
No, just come join me. I had the opportunity and the pleasure to represent the city of Galt a couple weeks ago and received a Project of the Year award from the American Public Works Association for our wastewater treatment plant. We won the category for environmental project for the small agency in $10 million to $50 million category, which is a good thing for us. There's some big projects, some really big cities that were there showing what they could do, and we came in a little small agency and showed what we could do. And I want to thank the support of council and West Shields for their design, for Korea Construction for their product they're building, and for Somas, the construction manager. We're going to bring the project in at our budget and on time. I present this back to the council.
Very good, thank you. Good job.
We can put that in the display case out here. We have some other awards out there, so that would be nice.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we'll adjourn and to the redevelopment agency. If I could have the roll call, please.
Board members Payne? Here. Haynes?
Here.
Powers? Here. Shelton?
Here. Public comment? None?
There's no speaker sheet?
Okay, we have 3 consent agenda items. If you'd read those off, please.
Yes, number 1, approval of the minutes of the meeting of August 17th, 2010. Number 2, approval of the redevelopment agency warrants. And number 3, approval of the treasurer's report for the period ending July 2010.
Okay, is there any questions? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
Good to approve the consent calendar?
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? None? Roll call vote, please.
Board member Payne?
Aye.
Payne?
Aye.
Powers? Aye. Shelton?
Here. Aye, yes.
He was making me laugh.
Okay, no, sorry. Adjourn and reconvene to the Galt City Council and City Clerk's report.
I don't have anything other than to say the Planning Commission and Parks and Rec Commission meetings were canceled for this week. And that's it.
Okay.
My calendar.
Staff report. Or comment.
I'll make a comment, and this is probably
Not a report,
something that,
comment, sorry.
yeah, something that Greg probably want to deliver, but I'll steal his thunder a little bit here. We did we have the bid openings for the Central Galt interchange. I know the council's all aware of this, and we got excellent bids, 7 proposals on the project. The engineer's estimate was over $25 million, and the low bid was $21 million. So we're going to have some good savings on the project. We do have some issues that we're trying to work through right now. We're hoping to have it all resolved this next week and bring the item back to the council on September 21st for award of the bid. We'll be under construction, and it's a 2-year construction period. So everybody hopefully will bear with us during the dust and chaos that will result likely during that 2-year period of time. But at the end, it's going to be an amazing project for this community. It'll open up a lot of opportunities for us and really give us a real signature project. As people ride up and down Highway 99, they'll be able to see this brand spanking new interchange that's going to really make the city proud. It's going to stand out, absolutely.
When did you say we would turn the dirt?
Greg, what's your estimate as far as if we award on the 21st, how long until we kind of get the bulldozers out there?
Well, right now, I think the groundbreaking is scheduled for October 5th.
Right.
And that's probably needs to get pushed back a couple of weeks. But we're on the 21st. It'll probably take 30 days before they're actually out, mobilized, doing something. We could probably do something, 2 weeks at the earliest, 3 weeks, maybe there, just before
I
the
think
middle of October.
tentatively you and I talked about the next meeting, which would be the 19th.
Right. I think that's probably better to do it.
That's it.
To do it 2 weeks later is a bit much.
Yeah.
Did we find out for sure who got the bid? Because there was some discussion.
We're still in the process of resolving
Okay.
that. We have some information from the attorneys. I'll be meeting with the attorney and Jason tomorrow and reporting recommendations to council.
Okay.
Okay, any other staff comments? If not, we'll go to council comments. Vice Mayor Payne?
You know, I had this on my list before all this started with Public Works. I wanted to brag on Public Works for a couple of things. One, thanks for the tour of the wastewater treatment plant. It was very interesting to see what's going on out there. I appreciate your time. Also, I am so happy to see those sidewalks going in at the railroad tracks. I can't tell you how many times I sit at my shop window watching the kids out in the street there crossing the tracks, as well as mothers pushing their strollers. And so I am just overjoyed, and they're looking really great. And finally, I wanted to say something about our street cleaner. I think he does an excellent job. I mean, he's not building bridges or anything, but I think he needs to be recognized because I think it shows the pride that we have in our community. So I don't know his name, but if you'd pass it on, that I think he's doing a great job.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
The other thing I needed to report on was the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Board, of which I am now a member. At the last board meeting, they talked about mitigation of construction sites because of the emissions. In other words, going into the construction sites, whether it's residential or commercial, and if the equipment that's being used is not up to standards, they would have to either replace that equipment, fix it, or they could mitigate. They could give us some money, and that would work too. The board as a whole decided that this is not the time to be doing that, so it didn't pass. It's postponed. Hopefully the economy will get better, and then we can look at it. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, SACOG, the greenhouse emissions target was placed at reducing by 7% per capita for 2020, 16% per capita by 2035. So I'm thinking what we're doing with the solar might kind of help us solve or at least comply with some of these requirements that are coming down the pipeline that we're all going to have to start dealing with. That's my report.
Okay, Councilmember Haynes?
Well, I think I'm good this week. Thank you. I'm going to pass it on to Mary Lou.
I just have one little trivial thing that Liz and I already talked about, but I'm glad to see that you're closing the overfill room when there's not an overfill, because we really do believe that when we're having a meeting here, if there's space in here, we should all be in here trying to solve our problems together instead of being in two different places. So I appreciate the fact that until it's used, it's not being open.
I'm trying to save energy.
Oh, good.
Oh, and I wanted to thank
Good job.
Mary Lou for going to the Commission on Adult and Aging a couple weeks ago, I think it was. I appreciate her attending.
You know, I wish I had my notes here. I'm kind of spaced out. I can't remember. I went and note my head. It was a very informative meeting, but don't have my notes. What can I say?
City Clerk Liz, I think you had
Yeah, I
something.
did have one more thing. This afternoon, just to let council know, we had kind of our kickoff to the election, which we do every 2 years, and we had our candidate forum, our candidate training for the campaign finance reform ordinance. And I would specifically like to thank City Attorney Steve Rudolph, who kind of led the charge, because it can be fairly technical in nature and difficult to understand. So he kind of led the meeting, which I call my meeting, but he led the meeting. So I'd like to thank Steve, and we had a very good turnout, and we're off. So.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for tonight and their interest and the concerns and the comments, staff, public, and council. And I just hope everyone has a great week.
Just one final comment. There were a couple of comments tonight about different tours and things, and just wanted to make sure the council was aware that if anybody wanted to have a tour, for example, of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project that's under construction right now, you can let us know. And Greg provided an excellent tour to Vice Mayor Payne, so it's certainly available if anybody else would like to go out there and take a look at that. Also, the license plate reader technology that Don mentioned earlier, if you're interested in kind of seeing that in action, you can coordinate with the chief of police, and he'd be happy to kind of give you a show of what that looks like. It's pretty fantastic technology. So, or if there's anything else that the council's interested in kind of taking a look at, just give us a call and we'll make sure that we can make that available to you. Thanks, Jason.
I will reiterate that, council's members, if you've not done it, please go do it. You're going to be impressed. Seriously. Great program. Okay, we will adjourn tonight's council meeting at 9:54. Thank you.
But see, that's what I don't like either, because it's still.
I know, I'm going to move you over a little more. Tell me to turn around.